Attention, please be advised. The following episode contains spoilers. Don't say we didn't warn you.
I saw the first one in high school, and
Wow. Like in the school?
No.
Or when you're that
God,
age?
no, I was.
Nerd On.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Nerd On, the podcast you didn't need, but you deserve.
You absolutely deserve it.
All levels of nerd are welcome.
Yeah. All 13 floors.
Yeah. If you're new to the show,
Oh God!
Hey, that
Such
was
an obscure reference.
That was
though.
a thing.
if you are new to the show, I am Josh,
Corey.
Ollie. Tom.
Caitlin.
and we have a very special guest. And when I say very special, she's very special to me.
Must be nice.
Oh.
She is the wifey, as I will call her.
Master of the Hounds.
Master.
Master of the Hound.
That's true.
Hi, I'm Bonnie. I'm Josh's wife.
Hello, Bonnie.
Thanks
Hi,
for coming on the
Bonnie.
show.
Hi,
I
Bonnie.
am so pleased and honored to be here with my nerds.
Woo!
On. Yeah.
Hails the
See, she uses the N-word right. My nerds.
Oh,
My
my
nerds.
God.
You're helping us
Oh
kick
my
off year 2 of Nerd On.
Yeah.
So welcome
First episode
to
of year 2.
Nice.
Holy
Very
balls.
exciting.
Wow.
Super exciting. Before we get into it, for those of you who don't know our topic today, a little later on in the episode, we're going to be talking about Trainspotting 2. Just want to give you a little upfront little
Heads up.
information here. It does deal with some mature topics like drug addiction, drug use, and suicide and stuff like that. So you've been warned.
And ye have been warned that there will be spoilers.
Yes.
Yes.
Like,
Spoilers. Much of many.
2
One of-
movies worth of spoilers.
Yeah.
One movie's over 20 years old and the other is about 2 to 3.
Mhm.
Um,
But
Wow.
first,
I did not realize how recent that was.
Mhm.
mhm.
It was last
Um,
year, actually.
Yeah.
Oh.
you have some biz.
Little bit of business.
Business.
Porky
To,
Pig.
Business.
That's all, folks.
This episode is brought to you in part by our patrons over at Patreon.
One day I'm going to like shadow
It's
it
going to
to
eventually
a T.
just be her.
To a T.
Yeah. Like,
okay.
and no one will even know
You
that
guys
I've
going to sound like
spoken.
Vegito from... Okay.
Yeah. Without our patrons, this level of nerddom would not be possible as
This
much as
second
we do
year.
it.
Yeah.
The second year.
We wouldn't have made it through halfway through the first year.
I would have killed
Yeah.
somebody.
Tom has killed somebody. Anyway.
Donate today to save a life.
We played hide the body. It was weird.
Yep.
It was
We've moved
weird.
past it.
I've
Yeah.
hidden other
Uh,
things.
So,
Let's talk to our guest.
let's talk.
Hello,
to
Bonnie.
the
Hello.
wifey.
Hi, Bonnie.
I know things, so
But I don't.
I'm not going to ask questions.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh my goodness.
Who you is?
Who am
What
I?
is?
I'm trying to figure that out my whole life.
Oh, man.
That is actually the
What
right
is
answer.
my
Yeah,
purpose?
that's
I
actually the
don't
right answer.
know. I can tell you what I do.
Okay.
That-
Okay.
Uh,
Start with that.
For a living, I'm a writer,
Mhm.
a writer-producer for, right now, the CW television network. I write
Let me
and
go pick
produce.
up that name real quick.
Drop this.
I write, well, that's what I do.
Yeah.
I write and produce radio promos, and my delicious husband is my
Wow.
mixer editor. So
Delicious.
That's
Oh, I think you
That's
just graduated from Sweet Baby Josh to Delicious Josh.
delicious.
That's
Oh.
a T-shirt right there.
he is.
Yeah.
He's delicious.
This is
Oh
my
my
delicious
goodness.
husband.
He's
Little
my mixer and my editor.
Dynamic duo situation.
Yeah, so we
I like it.
create radio promos for Supergirl, Flash,
I love
Black
those shows.
Lightning, all the CW stuff.
That's so cool.
Which is awesome.
But you've worked for ABC, Disney,
Yeah, just about everybody.
all the biggies.
That's sort of the day job. That's not like my passion, you know,
Right.
but it's the day job.
But I
What's
also
the- what's-
saw some awards in the hallway.
that's more
You
my
write other
passion.
things.
yes, what's
Those
the
are for
passion?
I write a script every now and again.
For short, for feature TV.
The one that you saw most of the awards for or whatever is a pilot, television pilot for a series that
for
I
Oh.
30 hour.
they're about 50 something. It's an hour, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a science fiction,
Mm.
dystopian
Ooh.
future kind of.
I'm interested.
Everyone
But
sign your NDAs.
It's never been. I'm not going to say what
Yeah.
Right.
the
Premise.
thing is
The magic.
that makes it. It's kind of like The Walking Dead, but it's not a zombie.
Are you into
Oh.
like science fiction?
I didn't
and
know that
fantasy?
about myself. I
Yeah.
didn't know I was a nerd.
Mm.
And then I was taking a writing class where like put all your favorite films on the wall on a Post-it note, and they were all science fiction movies.
And
That's
there you
awesome.
go.
Oh.
Blade Runner, all the
Brazil is her favorite movie.
and that's kind of fantasy science fiction, not
Yeah.
sort of.
We're
Science
gonna
fiction.
have you back to talk about Brazil.
That is my
because
favorite movie.
That
of
is
all
a
time.
conversation and a
I
half.
heard it's quite beautiful this time of year.
Yeah.
Brazil.
But actually, it's funny enough. Something like that happened to me a few years back. It's how I found out that I actually like Brad Pitt as an actor.
Yeah.
I went to visit some family friends in New York when I was living there, and they were like, "Bring some movies." And like I sat them down on the table. I was like, "We got tons of movies to watch," and they were like, "Wow, you like Brad Pitt?" And I was like, "Oh, not particularly."
You got
He
Legends
was
of the
in all
Fall.
of them,
You've
right?
got
I brought
Troy,
Glorious Bastards.
Seven.
I brought Seven. I brought
Fight
Snatch.
Club.
I brought Fight Club, and I brought The Assassination of Jesse James. And I was like,
Inglourious
"Well,
Bastards.
Inglourious
Wow.
Bastards.
I guess I do like Brad."
Of a man.
I do
That's
kind
what
of
you
wish
never
that you
know
brought.
until you quantify
And it's in
stuff.
front of you, and you're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, okay,
Yeah,
I
it
like
was
that
like the
thing."
whole thing, and then I had like Amadeus over here, something, one,
Too many notes.
too many notes. But anyway, so I keep winning awards for this
Wow.
freaking thing that keeps almost being made.
Must be nice.
Oh,
Like it's been in
on the
it's-
precipice.
It's
they
been in the
say.
hands of some peeps, some
It was
major high
CBS
ups.
Studios was going to make it. I have Jonathan Frakes is actually attached as my director.
Ooh, shout out.
Hey, Jonathan. He was Lieutenant Riker in
Star Trek.
Star Trek.
Yeah.
Number one. He wants to direct it,
Mm.
That's
That would
awesome.
be cool.
and he's been attached to it this whole time, but it keeps getting passed around. Anyway, so I do that occasionally. I'll write something
Mhm.
Nice.
when I get inspired.
So, I mean, kind of talking a little bit about the topic that we're here to talk about. What brings you to Trainspotting, or like why
Well,
why is this film the one that you wanted to, or these films the ones you want to talk about?
I've watched them so many times, and every time I watch them, I'm like, this is the best fucking film. I'll see something new, and I'm like, yes, and the music and the images and the
angst.
it's so. But it's funny because it's a dark comedy,
Oh, 100%.
right?
Yeah.
It's
So
like Corey's favorite.
It is.
yeah, so and it's just I just think both of them together as a set
Mhm.
are beautiful, and so I read the book when it came out. It
Mhm.
was probably, I don't know,
I think it was 86.
80
if I
something,
recall.
yeah.
86.
and it's such a great book because you have to use the glossary because it's written
oh,
in Scottish slang.
Wow.
The voice that Spud uses when he's writing, those are actual
Hmm.
pieces of the book.
Yeah.
So
Oh, okay.
it's written like that.
It's in T2, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's
so
writing
you have
Trainspotting.
to go to the glossary to figure out what the hell they're talking about. But it
Sorry,
wow.
93. It was first
Yeah.
published.
Oh wow.
was 93. So I read the book, and then the movie came out, and the movie was so, when you read the book, it's never as good as the movie is never as good as the
Right.
book.
But
But this one I was like, wow, this one is almost as good as the book.
mm.
Yeah.
oh,
Obviously, it's like a little truncated.
Oh,
Right.
absolutely.
be,
And some
yeah.
of the stuff that's in the second movie was in the first book.
Mm, cool.
But because there's two books too. But I don't know why it speaks to me. Maybe because I'm my heritage is Scottish,
Ah.
and it's
Instinctually.
dark.
Like,
Maybe it's like, oh, those are my peeps. I hear the accent. I'm like, oh, I love those guys.
You start walking around with a Scottish accent after that.
Oh,
Yeah,
and what's
Sean
funny is
Connery.
I would watch the first one because Josh and I were in a musical called Yo Ho Ho, A Pirate's Christmas, and I played an
Josh,
unintelligible. Yeah,
why haven't you told us about this?
I played an
Oh,
unintelligible Scottish person. So
Okay.
you couldn't
Oh.
understand what I was saying.
Yeah.
So to get into it every year, I did watch Trainspotting.
Did you just watch the Spud
Nice.
scene during the interview?
Or
And
Begbie. Freaking Begbie.
oh,
Begbie.
very hard to
gosh,
understand.
Begbie.
Begbie.
And so just to get into the cadence and stuff, so that's another reason why I watched it so much
Mm.
because and I stole words. I actually wrote all the lines that I said in that play. They're just like, say something unintelligible. So I wrote them. They mean things, but they're all in slang.
Mhm.
And I would steal some words from Trainspotting, and
Oh wow.
nothing like cunt because that's
Right.
Right.
it was a family show.
I feel like you can only be Scottish and say that word and get away with it.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like
because it doesn't mean like what it means to
No.
us. So it just
No.
Wait, what does it mean to them?
it's just like saying a wanker.
yeah.
But what's a? It's like I
What's
need
a
a
wanker?
glossary to a glossary.
Right. So I can't really. There's really not a straight answer to why I love these films so much. It's just I could watch them over and over and over and still love them. I guess.
You also have done other
Voiceover.
bits, right?
Yeah.
Voice bits.
Voice
Yeah,
bits.
I'd like to
Talking
say
things?
I've been auditioning for voiceover for like 30 years.
Oh.
Auditioning. I've been showing up to the audition. I can be seen all through LA, and now I can be seen sitting in front of my computer auditioning.
Perfect.
That's where you can see me. But I've done, here and there. I've done some video games.
Like names I can pick up.
XCOM.
Oh wow.
Oh,
I
Nice.
was
Hell yeah.
a bunch of soldiers, female soldiers.
That's dope.
Very
You
good.
can kinda
StarCraft.
Tell with this
Two.
voice right here.
See, that's a big one for me.
StarCraft,
2.
Heart of the Swarm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I played a crazy. Is she in here?
She's Zerg.
Zerg. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that wrecked my voice. That was really tough to do that voice.
oh my gosh.
That's awesome.
I'm sure.
Yeah. And
Cats and dogs.
cats and dogs. I played puppies, kitties,
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
You were
little
in
baby voices.
Death Becomes Her.
Yeah, I played Greta Garbo in that.
Yeah. She played Greta Garbo. It's really cool because she had like a photo shoot done of her all kind of dolled up as
Mhm.
Greta
Oh,
Garbo.
that's cool.
Yeah. Never
pretty
knew I
cool.
I
looked
think
like
you've
her.
posted that before, actually.
Have I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that when you guys were becoming best friends?
Yeah.
You guys
Maybe.
started stalking each
Probably.
other's social
Best
medias?
friends.
Probably.
Oh no, I just went over one night. That was it.
Oh.
There was no courtship.
Wow. Wow.
Is that TMI?
Yes,
Is
nerd
that
on
TMI?
After Dark.
No, it's
Love
JEI. It's just enough
TMI.
information.
We're married
JEI.
now. It all turned out.
Yeah.
This is true.
And we've been
JEI.
together for almost 9 years now.
Mhm.
Must
Three
be nice.
lovely
Aw.
dogs.
Yeah.
Must be nice.
Tom's so jealous. He can't contain it.
Very.
Aw, he looks
Truthful.
fine to me.
I appreciate you guys letting me be the fun uncle to Luna. It means a lot.
Yeah, we have babies. We have
Yeah.
all those doggy babies.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, I do say nerd on for you guys.
Oh,
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
She
How
is
do
the
we not
voice.
mention that?
And the spoiler alert.
Uh-huh.
She
Mhm.
is, yeah.
Nerd on.
Oh,
Hey.
There it is.
With a lot of reverb added to it. Right?
You're in a tunnel.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you've already heard her before this episode even started.
Yes.
balls.
You
I'm
already
the-
did that.
Technically, she's been on every episode.
Yeah.
She warned you about the spoiler.
Right?
Yeah,
I didn't
that's true.
realize that, but yes, I've
You've
been on every episode.
and now you are an episode.
That's just great.
Full circle moment. Here
yeah,
we go.
right? Now I get to be in the episode.
Mhm.
Awesome. I think with that, we can kind of go into the
Guess that
History
grump.
behind it.
Guess That Grump.
Guess
Okay.
that grump.
You're
Good
right.
point.
I
'Cause if
always
we
mess
give
that up.
initial reactions,
Yes.
then we're gonna know who's
We
the
always,
grump.
and it's always going to be Ali.
We always
Anyways.
do it.
Wow.
Is it always Ali,
Does it always
Tom?
be?
It's between him and I. We're gonna fight for the throne. But okay, so Guess That Grump is a segment of our show where if it's something that we can rate, such as 2 movies, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest, 1 being the lowest, or zeros, I guess. And right now at this portion of the show, we're going to guess who is going to have the lowest rating, and they're going to be the Grump of the week. So with that, I guess I go first with who I'm going to guess is the Grump. It's going to be Ali.
What?
It's going to be Ali.
Okay.
I guess
that
it's
was
Ali.
quick.
So Ali.
Okay.
And this is going to be, we're going to do out of, so each film will have their own rating. And I guess we'll kind of do
Interesting.
the
Average?
aggregate
Okay.
of them. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I like
Ollie.
Me.
Yeah. Hot potato.
Gosh, it's a hard one to pick. I'm gonna go with Tom.
that.
It honestly should just be.
That's really hard. It's going to be Tom.
Just say Bonnie.
It's never going to be me.
You can
I
pick me.
say Tom.
Okay.
Tom.
It's gonna be Ali.
Me? Okay.
Yeah.
Bonnie, you want to cast your
Bonnie.
I
vote?
think it's going to be Tom.
Oh,
Okay. So that's 3 to 2.
3 2.
3 to
Okay.
2.
So Tom
Mhm.
goes last.
Yeah, I'm going
One
last.
rating.
And then you're going
Ollie goes second
before me.
last. All right.
Cool.
So the book is set in the mid 80s, which is
Mhm.
where I got confused, in Edinburgh.
Mm.
Because at the time there was a epidemic of opiates being used, so a heroin surplus.
This is in real world.
This is real world, yeah. At the time in the mid 80s, there was a surplus of heroin that was being shipped over from Pakistan, and then there was an epidemic at the
Oh,
time, which led to the AIDS epidemic of the early 90s and stuff like that, which is what they faced partially in T1 a little bit. And so Danny Boyle took this book, and that was adapted by the name real quick.
John Hodge,
Thank you, John Hodge.
screenplay writer.
This is his second film. This is Danny Boyle's second film. This is the second film with Ewan McGregor as well.
Sophomore films.
Yes. And actually, funny enough, the movie after this, The Beach, that Danny
Mhm.
Boyle did,
Yeah.
was the reason that him and Ewan McGregor didn't speak for like
Mm-hmm.
15 years.
Oh.
He was passed over.
Yeah. He was, Ewan had felt a little hurt because he had been in his first 2 films,
Yeah.
or 3 films or something like
And
that.
it was
He one of
Leonardo
those.
DiCaprio. Yeah. So
Leonardo
they
DiCaprio
picked
got
him,
the
yeah.
role.
Mhm.
So they didn't speak for 15, something like that, years. and finally came
Whoa.
together again and became are very close friends now.
Yeah.
And did Trainspotting 2. And it was always Danny Boyle's idea to not do Trainspotting 2 right after, because he was like, it wouldn't make sense for these characters. I want the characters to actually age in real time.
Yeah.
And so he said it 20 years after, and 20 years later they made the movie with the same actors, which I thought was cool that everyone came back together to do it.
Yeah.
Everyone had a great time on the first film, and it was really at the time unknowns. Everyone in that cast who are now huge stars, they all have their own shows and they all have their own films
Things
that their
going
franchises
on.
they're carrying. At the time, we're nobody.
Wow.
So I think that's the power of a good movie sometimes.
So with that, brings us to our initial reactions.
Mm-hmm.
Who would like to start? How about Bonnie? Your
My-
initial
my
reaction when you
initial-
first watched it.
The very first one, the
Both-
first time.
Both of them.
Well,
Let's
like
do-
I said, I was like, wow, that's almost as good as the book.
Okay, so you read the book and you knew of the book. Right?
Yeah. And
Okay.
then the second one, we went to the. So it was only playing at like one theater here. It was weird
Oh,
when
really?
it came out.
That's
Yeah,
right.
it was at
Theaters
the
nearby.
ArcLight. So we
Oh.
take a trip to the Hollywood ArcLight, and we watched it. And I walked out, and I remember going, "That was a great fucking movie." And to be a sequel,
Mhm.
and to be
I'm surprised.
probably as good as the first one. I
20
thought.
years later.
20 years later,
I'd argue better.
could be better. It, you know what I mean?
Bonnie's a grump.
That was my initial reaction. I couldn't believe how good it was for a sequel.
That's a
The
great
second one.
That's so far away from its original. Especially.
Yeah, that's so, and that I still just enjoyed it just as much. It just brought
Yeah.
so much,
I have a question. So you read the book and
Mhm.
going it to watch the movie, were you like nervous about that?
Well, I'm always skeptical,
Okay.
because I read The Shining and then I went and saw the film. The film's great, but it's not
Mhm.
ever going to be that book,
No,
and it's the same. You could
it's an
argue.
adaptation.
Yeah, yeah. So you can't possibly have everything in it. But yeah, I always go in skeptically.
Yeah.
You know. That was
Who's next? Caitlin?
Caitlin, we're going.
Ooh, initial reactions on this movie.
Both.
That's right, both.
Just
So
start with Trainspotting 1. Yeah.
Trainspotting 1 was very jarring, I will say. I didn't really understand what the actual topic of the movie was, because I was like, oh, Trainspotting, what is this? And someone was like, it's about like drugs and how it messes up your life. And I thought it was about selling drugs.
Mm.
I did not know it was taking drugs. And I have some personal history we'll get into later. But I had like multiple breakdowns while watching this movie. And afterwards I was very shooken up for several days. And there's like a happy ending for it, but it was still
Yeah,
very jarring.
I think that is happy. I think any movie that's going to elicit a response out of you
Yes.
like that
Yeah.
has got to be a great movie.
Can't just be
yeah.
a movie.
No, it was a
you
very
know,
good movie.
it must have been true enough to touch you. you know?
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I'll no,
No, that's a
you are
great point. That's a
100%
beautiful point.
spot on.
Yeah.
And I have a whole bunch of things
Yeah.
to say about it, but my initial reaction was jarring but good, and then the second one, I really didn't know what to expect, so I was like, oh, this is a good, like, interesting movie, but it didn't have the same kind of impact. And again, I'll get to that in a little
Mhm.
bit. So, Joshy Josh.
Yeah. So the
Delicious
first one,
husband.
delicious.
My
God.
delicious husband.
The first. Oh god.
Gonna be on-
I'm gonna take a
delicious
stab.
job.
That's going to
I'm
be
take a
on our
stab.
apron. You
Okay.
buy on
I'm
Shopify
gonna take
right
a
now.
stab at it, Josh. I like the
Make
movie.
it happen.
I did like the movie.
There we go.
The movies.
was your first time, though?
The first time that I saw
Movies.
Trainspotting was actually with my lovely wife.
Aw.
She was like, "Have you ever seen this movie?" And I was like, "No, sir, I have not." And
Sir.
so we watched it, and I was immediately hooked. I am of the mind that I love UK entertainment,
Mhm.
British TV, British movies. They're just
Their
An interesting
vibe.
thing at the time that this was released, a majority, 98% of the market was period pieces. So
no.
it was
Isn't that
like
funny?
it was like not a movie that was
I mean, they were kinda-
foreseen in the market.
They were kind of
Right.
coming off of the Western phase too, around that time frame
Mhm.
too.
Yeah.
So
Huh.
period piece.
So I immediately dug it. I will say that so kind of on your vein of what you were talking about, Caitlin.
Mhm.
a lot of
It
a lot
does
of these
elicit
innuendo words.
some emotional responses if you are familiar with addiction, from personal or from watching. So it is kind of one of those things that it's like it's kind of difficult to watch at some points. The second one, as Bonnie said, we walked out speechless, because you do go into a sequel of something that you love with kind of this
Don't ruin it.
this
Look
Please
at
don't
you
mess
solo.
up.
skepticism.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay. And again, it was only at one theater, and we call it a dia libre. It's a date day. We go out and we just go on an adventure, and we went to the movie, and we just walked out just speechless. And I think the first thing that we said to each other was, that was a great
That
fucking
was
movie.
really good. We're like, that was really good. Because we
Like-
see so many stinkers anymore. It's
Yeah.
like, wow. You know?
Yeah. So it was really like, wow. That was, because I really didn't expect it. And it was just for me, it was a continuation of the story, and that's what I wanted. Like
And it's based on the
yeah.
second novel.
yeah.
Well, not so much.
Not so much.
lightly.
Yeah, lightly.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple of things.
Yeah, we'll get into that, but that was like, oh damn.
Initial reaction.
Core pal.
My initial reaction, I saw the first one in high school, and
Wow. Like in the school?
No.
Or when you're that
God,
age?
no,
That wouldn't be
I was that
appropriate.
age. And
PE was canceled, so we watched
yeah, we watched
Trainspotting.
Trainspotting.
Oh my
School.
God, no.
Film is lit.
No, no, no.
Roll in the
No, no, no,
media
no.
cart.
But no, I had seen it when I was in high school, and it was at this time where I went through a period and watched a lot of like kind of eccentric films, such as like Fear and Loathing and stuff like that. I had a friend who was like, "Watch these," and I'm very grateful for him. Shout out to Corey, Kory.
Wow.
So I was hooked on it. I mean, at that time I was already a fan of Ewan McGregor's and that style of filmmaking. Like I already loved Fight Club and dark comedies and stuff like that. So for me, especially with the music mixed in with it,
Oh yeah.
I was hooked. I was hooked the first time, and I've watched it multiple times ever since. And like Bonnie, I find something new that I love every time, even though it's something I've heard or seen before. It's just whatever point in my life I go, I relate to that now. Like I really think that's a great thing that Danny Boyle's done with it. It's kind of timeless in that sense. And then Trainspotting 2, which came out last year, I didn't get to see it in theaters. I was in the midst of planning my wedding at the time. It was 4 months out. Chaos was ensuing, and we got invited
You're
over
saying
to
reasons, but I'm hearing excuses.
It is an excuse. So
But the solution is
my buddy, shout out to George. He was like, "Let's have
Shout
a
out to
movie
George.
night. We'll have you guys over." We went over to George and Elaine's place, and we watched
Shout out
it.
to Elaine.
And they hadn't watched it either, and they were big fans of Trainspotting. And so it was this big moment where George and I were like sitting next to each other, and we're like holding hands, being like, "Okay, here we
We're
go."
holding hands.
And as soon as the movie ended, George and I just both were silent for a minute and just went, "Fuck."
Same thing we did. Yeah.
That was great. Holy shit, that was amazing. And so
Same
I mean,
expletive and everything.
I again was like at the same moment, I was like, please don't ruin this for me. I love this
It's
movie
almost
so
like
much.
a sigh of relief where you go, oh, thank God.
But there was like
So good.
that the little bits
I
I
have
had
those
seen
every
from
day.
the trailer had given me some like that one when he first sees Sick Boy again. He said, "What you been up to for 20 years?" And I was like, "Yes, it's gonna be fine." And so yeah, I loved it.
Oh, yeah, Oxenfree.
So for me, I also watched it very recently, and I didn't know what I was kind of like
Both?
Kaylin.
Both of
Both.
them?
I watched them back to back. But when I started for the first Trainspotting, I was like, I don't know what I'm getting into. I didn't even like
It's
what am I know because
whoa.
Trainspotting doesn't really like
I'm in a toilet.
do the content justice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like, doesn't set up the expectation or whatever of what you're gonna see. And I went into it, I'm like, okay, like I was like, what am I like
Okay.
where do I care? Like what is, and then there's like a scene halfway through the first one that hits you, or at least it hit me
Ton of
like
it.
a freight train.
Yeah.
And I was like, got it.
Whoa.
I get what this movie is about, and I'm in love.
Mhm.
And
Oh, wow.
It was the
I
fucking
picked
180.
wrong.
it was a complete 180 from the first part
It
of
was
it.
the poop scene.
'Cause
let's
it
be
was-
honest.
Yeah, that poop scene.
scene.
That poop scene
The worst
changed
toilet
your
in
life.
Scotland.
Yeah.
since
The
we
godsend.
I was thinking of the sheets, but
Since we did spoiler
there's
warning.
two poops.
Oh, that's right,
So much
Spud.
poop.
Yeah.
Mhm.
since we did spoiler warning, it was the baby scene.
Of course it
Oh.
was. Yeah.
And I was like, now it was just that in that scene and like the like outcome from that, I was like, I completely understand what this movie's about. It's not about heroin.
Hmm.
It's about these four guys and
Yeah.
and influencing each other, and we'll talk about that kind of stuff in a little bit. But that, I completely love the first one, like through and through. And then I was like, I was gonna take a break and play some video games for a while before watching the second one, and then I was like, well, let me just turn it on and just to kind of see
with the vibe.
So I was like, oh crap.
Let's just
and like in that
see.
moment, I noticed that it's 20 years later. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it's this next one's 20 years later. And then I turned it on and I didn't stop watching it. And it was, I loved it. A lot.
Yeah.
I'm wrong.
So
I'm
you guys picked
wrong.
right.
You are wrong.
Whoever picked me
We'll talk
might
about-
be winning.
Tom.
Talk about more of why
Yeah.
as we go on.
Grumpy
but-
Tom.
So I know, right? You know what's so funny? The
Be a
first
grump about anything.
reference, the first reference I saw of this was in Family Guy, and it was when Stewie was thinking that the man in white is going to put him back in the womb, and he's afraid of the doctor, and he has like a fever dream, and then he sees himself crawling on the ceiling.
Yeah.
And I was like, "What the hell does this come from?" And I never got it. And then I was like, "It's from Trainspotting." I was like, "I don't know what the hell that is." I was a kid, and then finally college came around, and I watched this twice in college, Trainspotting 1, and I watched it in film and humanities, and then film in or history of world cinema. And it was like the world cinema portion was about like European film, and then the film in humanities was kind of like talking about the subtext of human condition. And so I was like, I had to watch it for two different reasons, and I'm like, my God, I get it.
It's really cool.
That's
though.
hilarious that it's in schools and it's
Oh,
being
yeah.
used
It's
as
in
like,
You
textbooks.
can see why.
It's
Wow.
also in drug awareness ads and stuff
Yeah.
like that. as
Wow.
well.
And
That's
I
crazy.
and that was a weird thing, is that I had to come to it with an academic purpose. I didn't come to it on a leisure purpose.
Right.
And so with me, like watching the first one, it was very hard for me to even, and I don't want to alienate anybody, but like I never had anyone close to like addiction or anything like that, or I've never been tempted or anything like that, or close to those kind of things. So there were parts of it where it kept me distance from it, but then there was never a time for me where I questioned the merit of the film and what the subtext it was talking about.
Yeah.
And the one thing that it really did make me want to do is try to read the book.
Mm.
Yeah.
That just never happened because I don't know how to read.
No, I want to.
because it's paper and you have to turn. Oh, you can put it on a device.
But where's the on button?
Yeah, right.
Where's the
Oh my
audio?
Where's the
Whose
audiobook?
voice is it?
Ewan McGregor.
How do I change the pages?
Yeah.
But then the second one came out, recently, by the time of this recording, which is 2017. And I remember it blowing up my social media news feeds.
Mm.
And I was like, why is this? There's so much buzz and rave about
I was
the
one of
sequel.
those.
And I was like, what?
It's
And
weird.
then-
I did not hear a peep, but maybe I wasn't
but
looking.
you kind of like live under a rock sometimes.
I
I'm
do.
kidding.
No, you're absolutely
And the
right.
rock's called Destiny.
And you
I'm
don't
kidding.
even know what Facebook is. So.
I have like, if you look right now, I probably have 150 notifications.
Oh,
on
must be
Facebook.
nice.
Mm.
Oh no.
You must be very popular.
No.
Anyways,
It's true.
No, it's
he
2
logged
years
into
worth.
his Facebook on my computer for something we were doing here.
Yeah.
And that night, I like went home and I went to Facebook and I was like, how the hell do I have 199? Oh, it's not me. Got it. 199 notifications.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I just remember seeing such huge like hysteria, fan craze,
outpour.
love about it. And the cool thing, I thought the biggest thing was that like I knew from the very beginning, just from the marketing, that they were capturing the same vibe, that they were capturing the same spirit and almost the same voice, but the voice is 20 years older.
Mm.
And that's, I think, a very smart decision from the writing and the crew, everybody involved, that they all accepted that. And then the fans stayed loyal and was looking towards that.
So it was a very emotional like 5 minutes of me finishing the first one, realizing the second one is set 20 years later, starting the second one and seeing all them faces
Yeah.
20 years later. And I'm like, oh my
Mhm.
God.
And
I
then
think it
opening
actually-
with like the kids montage and stuff,
Yeah.
which
And I was
reflects
like,
Well, it
the first
starts
one.
They're
that
going
first-
for it,
yeah,
know?
the first scene.
And
Yeah.
and Danny Boyle said that in the interview where he's like, it was very intentional and stuff. But we'll talk
Yeah.
about that later.
Yeah.
But yeah, I watched the second one, and I will say this: I think the direction is better in this second one, but then there's not the same amount of like richness in some of the symbolism in that is in the first one.
Mhm.
Ooh,
Like, I
maybe
like the
still
direct-
got it.
I like the directing of the second one better than I like the directing of the first one, but the first one is much more rich to me.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's more gritty too. They had
gritty, but
what,
also-
1 million
Yeah.
something. No, everybody was getting what 800 pounds a week to act in that thing. I mean, they didn't
Whoa.
Yeah.
shot every scene
Super low
one
budget.
time.
but also I think like cinematography is better
Yeah.
in the first. I mean, cinematography, I liked it better. It was a little bit more controlled in the second one, but then the art direction and color aspects were a lot better in the first one.
yeah.
Mm.
Oh,
So that's
interesting.
I'm just looking at it that way. But yeah,
Mhm.
that's me. And with
Cool.
that,
Great.
brief synopsis.
It has to be brief. 2 movies. Wowzers.
Oh man, who's got this?
All right, I'll try. Bonnie, help me out.
Oh, I'll
Oh, you
I'll
will
try,
help me
but-
out.
Okay,
Do you
I'll
want me
try.
to do it?
How about we do it as a team,
Okay.
as a nerd on fam?
Start us
Oh.
off though, Tom.
It starts opening with the opening running montage of Ewan McGregor, who plays Mark Renton, who's running from the police, but also jam packed cut with a football game where you get introduced to the gang. And there's Sick Boy, there's Spud, there's Tommy, and there's Begbie. And you kind of get an idea of each of their personalities with that.
And Renton.
And Renton is running away from the
Yeah.
police.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much talking about, I think immediately, about how smack can mess up your life.
Well,
the opening line
is
is a play on an ad,
Yeah.
an anti-drug ad from the 80s.
Yeah, it's
and they're
the
mocking
Choose
it.
Life, monologue.
So it immediately sets you up with someone mocking the norms of society because they believe that it's all, it's all hypocrisy in a sense.
We find the gang at this place called Mother Superiors, which is a person, Mother Superior, and they are taking the drug is heroin.
Yes.
Heroin.
Heroin. I had to forget. I forget what drugs
Sweet
because they do
baby
speed
Tom.
and everything. I know, right? They're doing heroin. and
Finally.
you're kind of seeing the slum and the slums of like where they're living. It's like a wrecked, destroyed apartment and all that stuff. There's a baby crawling around everywhere. There's women there who play roles, but they're not the main cast that we saw in the opening.
Essentially, it's
sequence.
a juxtaposition, that opening scene, because what they're doing
It
and the
starts
way
in the
they're
middle.
acting is terrible, but the voiceover and the way they're talking about it is all glorification.
sense. You start with Sick Boy talking a lot about Sean Connery movies and all that stuff. And later on, you really follow Mark Renton throughout the film. And Mark literally wakes up and says, I'm off the skag. I'm not going to do this anymore. Tells that to Mother Superior. Mother Superior laughs. And he's like, yeah, I've heard that before. And so
There's
Mark
final hits and
And
there's
then there's final hits.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So he goes to get a
shit ton of food and milk and magnesia and all this stuff so he can try to kick the habit.
as well as suppositories.
Suppositories from the
From-
writer.
The writer of the novel,
Mhm.
actually,
Oh.
which I found out
Um,
recently.
I forget the name of Mark Forster. Mike Forster.
I think
That's the
so.
character.
Yeah.
But then it's played by the actual writer of the book.
Makes a lot of sense now.
And he puts the suppositories up his butt. But on the way home, he realizes that the heroin's gone and he's no longer constipated because that's what it does apparently.
So he goes
And
to the
so he
worst
goes to
toilet in
the
Scotland.
worst toilet in Scotland and then shits his brains out. And then realizes the suppositories are in there. So he goes down there, swims it, finds it. It's this cross into the expressionistic side of film, which I loved. And then he gets out. He's all wet, but he starts the process of having to
withdrawals.
to cleanse himself.
Yeah.
He meets up with Sick Boy, and they are at a park, and they just start shooting the shit, kind of showing how
Sick Boy is also quit.
Sick Boy is
to
also
spite
quitting.
Mark
And also
Mhm.
actually shooting people.
Yeah, they're
with a
shooting
BB gun.
guns.
Pellet gun.
What happens after that?
Well, then they meet up with Spud, who's also, I believe, trying to quit. And they all go out to a bar.
Volcano Bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everyone has their hookups, right? Begbie's got someone. Tommy's got his girlfriend.
Renton realizes that he doesn't have it, and with heroin, you lose your sex drive, and he realizes that's the one thing he needs now.
Yeah, now he's got it back and it's full force. So he
Yeah.
meets this girl. They dance the night of the way. Everyone goes home and hooks up with somebody. Next day, they wake up and everyone's having a different experience. Right? So Mark wakes up
It's not great.
and he sits down with her, quote unquote, what he thinks are his the
Flat
girl's
Flatmates.
flatmates, only to find out that she is 14 years old and had snuck into a club and wants to start a relationship with him, which he's scared about because, of
It's
course,
illegal.
laws.
Blackmails him into staying in the relationship.
Yeah, blackmails him staying in the relationship. Spud shit the bed.
Yeah.
And,
Literally.
Literally.
Very
literally
Did not have
tries-
sex.
tries to sneak it out, and the mom of his girlfriend at the time is way too nice and demands that she does the laundry, and they end up fighting over it, and it goes literally
Splat
everywhere.
Everywhere.
Poop
Tommy ends up having a bad break with his girlfriend
Because Mark stole a
Mark
sex tape
stole
of
their
theirs.
They
sex
couldn't find a
tape, and
sex
they were
tape.
planning on watching
Yeah.
the sex tape while they're screwing.
Yeah.
And
So they
then-
all make a conscious decision to get back on heroin.
yes.
And they do full force. And all the while, after his breakup, Tommy decides that he wants to try heroin as well. And he goes through a sad story in the film where he actually ends up, during the time, again, there was the AIDS epidemic. So he does contract AIDS through sharing a needle with someone. And by the end of the film,
and he was like the health nut. of
he was a
all.
health nut. He was
worked out
super,
all the
all
time.
the tapes he had were all sports highlights. The
Uh-huh.
first scene you see him in, he's playing soccer. The next one, he's lifting weights.
Yeah.
So it was like, and that's Mark is the one who sells it to him, and that weighs heavily on Mark.
Yeah, and then after that sequence, they're at another bar and they're with Begbie, and Begbie's kind of talking this smack and all this stuff.
My favorite line in the
God.
series.
So good.
You say it.
That lassie got glass, no question about it, and no cunt leaves here till we find out what cunt did it.
And the reason is because he threw a glass over the balcony and hit some girl, and she's bleeding all over her face. A fight ensues. They all get arrested, and then Mark ends up getting put on probation because he's already started to cleanse himself.
He's checked into a rehab place essentially.
Spud gets the full
Sentence.
throttle of the law and shit, and then they end up going to a bar to celebrate, like, hey, Mark's not going to prison. Spud's mom's there, sad about it, and then
Begbie's a dick about it.
Begbie's a dick about it.
Pretty bad.
And Mark Renton's not having it. He's not doing well. So he ends up going back to the Mother Superior to get one more hit. Just one more hit. And he ODs.
Yeah.
And Mother Superior has to drag his ass outside and then call the ambulance. And then
No, he
his,
calls him a taxi.
calls him taxi.
Yeah.
And then his parents pick him up from the hospital. He's in
We
his...
did skip the baby part, by the way.
I did.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There is a scene before everyone gets arrested.
It's when they were getting
when they're back on
heroin.
heroin. They go so deep into it that the baby from the beginning, actually, no one checks on her and she passes away. And it turns out through all of this that it is most likely Sick Boy's
Baby. Yeah.
baby,
Child.
and they all essentially disperse. I mean, Mark's way of dealing with it is to take another hit.
I'm going to cook
and,
up.
So fast forward, all the other stuff happens. Everyone's arrested. They all split up. No one's really seeing anybody. Mark goes through serious withdrawals with his parents.
They put him on
Yeah.
cold turkey.
Lock him
Cold
in his
turkey
room.
withdrawals.
They lock him.
And he starts
Multiple
hallucinating,
locks.
all that kind of stuff, and eventually comes out on the other side, wanting to be better, gets a job at real estate, moves to London, only to find out that, and actually has that relationship with the girl, like correspondence and speaking and stuff like that. And they write letters, and she writes him a letter saying, I saw your friend Begbie on the TV, Franco. And then he hears a ring at his doorbell, and Franco is there wanted for armed robbery, even though it's a replica and it's plastic silver. So it's all shit. So he's hiding out in Mark's apartment, destroying the place.
Life is a living hell.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So Mark's trying to work, but he's there. He tells him to bet some money on some ponies. They win big. They go out to celebrate. And then Sick Boy shows up and starts living at Mark's for free as well. Sells his TV.
Poor Renton.
Mark's not happy.
There's
They're
an
shitting
opportunity.
on Mark.
Yeah.
Essentially, his friends are shitting on him, but he can't say anything because they're his mates, as he says. So they all go to Tommy's funeral after he passes away. And while they're having a drink at the old place, Sick Boy pitches him, Spud,
A skag deal.
Franco, all pitch him a deal that he bought some drugs and he wants to sell them for 3 times, 4 times the price that he bought him for. Going back and forth about it. And finally, Ewan McGregor's character Mark agrees to do it. They meet
Mainly
up with
because his life falls apart
Yeah.
back where he was.
Yeah. So it means that he'll get them out.
Yeah.
And they're gone. So they do the deal. They get the drugs. They meet with a guy. He talks them down from 25 to 16,000,
Oh, that was 20.
right?
It was 20,
20
then
to
19,
16.
then 16.
Okay,
20 to
sorry,
16.
20 to
Fucking
20
16.
to 16 means they each get 4 apiece. So the
Because
deal
Spud has
goes.
joined the group now.
The deals goes through and they meet up at a bar. They're all celebrating. Everything's happy. Mark contemplates with Spud running out with the money while Sick Boy's in the bathroom and Franco's getting beer. And then all hell breaks loose because
Begbie is-
someone accidentally bumps Begbie.
And Begbie is an asshole who likes to fight people.
He gets off. His drug is
Yeah, he's
rage.
addicted to
And
violence.
adrenaline and stuff. So
Hardcore
he
violence.
literally like smashes this guy almost to death. And then they all somehow get out of there scot free because he's crazy and no one wants to challenge Franco.
Touch that.
And while everyone's asleep, Mark wakes up, grabs the money, and as he's going out the door, looks down and notices that Spud's actually awake and can see this whole thing happening. And that's one of my favorite moments that I get goosebumps every time the
He
camera
shakes his
pans down to
head.
him. Yeah, Spud shakes his head no, and Mark goes, "Well, I'm gonna go,"
Uh-huh.
and he leaves the 2,000 in a
4,000.
locker,
Yeah.
hoping that Spud
Wasn't it?
gets it. And as
4,000, yeah.
he walks, which he does,
And
He gets the
Begbie ends up
4,000.
freaking out knowing that the money's stolen. He destroys the hotel room that
Gets
they're
arrested.
in. He gets arrested and everyone just kind of pieces out.
Yeah.
Leaves themselves.
So the last thing we see besides Spud getting the 4,000 is Renton walking towards the camera. Now a parallel with his beginning thing where he actually is choosing life. He wants the fancy. He wants the car and the
Big fucking TV.
the TV and everything. And he goes, "I'm gonna be just like you." and that's kind of where it ends.
And then 20 years later, T2 opens
Yep.
with Mark Renton, now older, on a treadmill.
What's
Doing
his
all
new
those
addiction?
things.
Is running.
Mhm.
He likes to run away and run from everything. It's symbolic. But then he has this heart thing, and
He has
then
a heart attack.
falls and hits himself, and then it's white noise for a little bit. At the same time, we're figuring out what happened to Begbie. He's still in prison, and he's just as angry as he always is.
Yeah,
If
and
not angrier.
he blames Mark for all of his
Everything.
problems.
Everything.
Spud is now losing another. He lost another job because he was daylight savings time. He was late for everything.
Right, because of his lifestyle. It's his as a junkie, you don't pay attention to daylight saving time. It doesn't matter because
He's
all the
still a
days blend
junkie.
together, right?
And then so Mark and Sick Boy now is extorting people, blackmailing people by doing
videotaping them
snuff
having
films
sex.
with all that
Yeah.
stuff. But mainly, he's partnered up with the Bulgarian beautiful woman that uses strap-ons and
Has her
fucks
way.
shadow guys and
Yeah,
extorts
right.
them
That's a way
for
to
money.
put it. Yeah.
Put it lightly.
And now Mark Renton is comes back to Edinburgh.
Mhm.
Right?
Edinburgh.
That's how you pronounce it.
Edinburgh.
To
Yeah.
be with his family. His mom's passed away since.
Yeah, and we still don't know why. Other reasons why Mark, what's going on with Mark? And the whole thing is kind of still following Mark, but we kind of figure out what happened to him in the last 20 years.
We think he's just going home because he almost died. To like,
Yeah.
Because he had a heart attack.
Yeah.
First person Mark visits is Spud. Spud is actually about to commit suicide.
or he is committing
He
suicide.
He's
is.
committing suicide. He writes this one farewell letter to
Gail.
his
His girlfriend.
girlfriend and his
girlfriend
son.
and his son.
And he Mark Renton saves his life, stops him, and they reconnect.
Much to his behest.
Yeah, reconnect. Spud says, "You ruined my life." He's like, "What do you mean? I gave you $4,000?" Like, I was a junkie. What do you think I was going to do with it?
Yeah.
And so there's more guilt on Renton.
But they
and-
make up very quickly, and he says,
Yeah.
"Don't go killing yourself." And he goes, "Not while my best mate's in town, of course." So they go out, and then eventually one thing leads to another, and Mark finds himself in Sick Boy's bar, and they have a fight in which Mark, a really big fight, and Mark gets knocked out. They eventually come to, start talking about their problems, stuff like that. They decide that they're going to be friends, but then we cut to Sick Boy talking to his girlfriend. He said, "I'm going to take him for everything he's worth. I'm going to really make him hurt for everything he did to me back in the day." So now we know Sick Boy is
Asshole.
still pissed.
Still pissed.
Begbie
Yeah.
breaks
Still
out of
very
prison.
upset.
Yep, Begbie breaks out of prison. One thing leads to another. Begbie finds Sick Boy. Sick Boy lies about Renton being in town. He says, "Yeah, I saw him in Edinburgh." Because there's a few scenes leading up to that where Sick Boy and Renton start getting along. And I think Sick Boy, the more and more they hang out, the more and more they get into that, like, I guess we're friends.
Friends
Yeah.
for real.
Spud begins
and then-
rehabilitation.
And then Mark comes clean that he's getting a divorce. He doesn't have any kids, like he told Sick Boy, and that kind of thing. And I think that is exactly what Sick Boy was looking for. So he doesn't want to take him for all his worth anymore.
he's lost
like,
his job.
instead,
Yeah.
let's be pals and do some scams together. So they scam
Make a
this like
brothel.
1690 bar, and like, yeah, Sick Boy's whole thing is that he wants to
Sauna.
he wants to build a sauna with his girlfriend, where she's actually from a sauna, which is a brothel in the UK.
Spud begins construction of this place.
Yeah, so
above the bar.
Spud goes clean.
Yeah.
And he starts channeling all his energy into being the building manager of this location that Mark and Sick Boy and his girlfriend had bought to turn into their bar brothel kind of thing.
While also going through withdrawals.
Yep.
Renton starts actually having a relationship with
Sick Boy's girlfriend because they're not really together,
Together.
according to her. It's more in Sick Boy's head. Eventually, Franco, who has
into-
tried to reunite with his family, take his son out on a few heists. His son wants to be a hotel manager, decides, "I'm going to leave forever. I'm going to kill Mark." So they all meet at Sick Boy's crew, right? At his bar. And he had taken Sick Boy's girlfriend's phone, texted them both to meet there, and is like, I'm going to kill you all. That's what's going to happen. So a fight ensues. Sick Boy gets knocked out pretty quick. Spud doesn't do anything, kind of falls to his knees.
Chase.
Spuds. Chase happens. You find out that Mark and Franco actually met in
Grade
like
school.
preschool
Yeah.
or grade
Mm,
school, and he
right.
had been held back, and the teacher had said, "Mark, why don't you sit next to Franco?" He tries to appeal to this side of him. Doesn't work. Eventually, this chase happens in the half-constructed building, and Mark falls and starts hanging himself off of a wire.
He gets caught.
Yeah.
A wire wraps around his neck.
Yeah.
Renton just
exactly.
pushes him, yeah.
And so Franco goes to finish it, and Sick Boy actually saves Mark's life.
With the
Knocks him
pepper
out with the bludgeon.
Yeah.
No, sorry. Yeah.
Pepper
spray
pulls him
by
off,
Sick
and
Boy.
then Spud takes a toilet
spray. It smashes
That
him.
Yeah.
knocks out Franco.
Freaking toilet.
and they put him in a
Trunk.
trunk and drop him off at the police station. And all the while, everyone else is set to live their own lives.
The girlfriend leaves, goes back home, and she has taken a liking to Spud's stories. And
Well,
Spud's
here's the
been-
thing: she
steals all their money.
the money that
Takes
they
all
were
the
accept,
seed
that
money.
they got
Yeah.
a loan for this building.
Steals $100,000 from them using Spud's ability to forge signatures, gives him a cut, and leaves the country
So it's the
because you
same
find
thing.
out that she actually has a family she was trying
Mhm.
to get back to this whole time.
Mhm.
So yeah,
And then Mark Renton goes back to his house where he meets with his dad. His mother's passed away, but he finally has some closure with a connection
Past.
with his father.
hmm
And finally goes to his room where he had that fever dream in the first movie and just starts playing music and has accepted
Who
where
he
his
is.
life is
Yeah.
and what
I
has
think
to happen.
there's just one little part
Yeah,
that was
please.
missing that's really important is when they actually start to do one hit.
Oh yeah, that's
Both
right.
Spud.
And Spud doesn't. It's Renton and Sick Boy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because Mark says, I don't know how you live with yourself when you were
Oh,
so high
yeah.
you couldn't take care of your baby. You didn't even notice.
Yeah,
she
they
was
had a fight.
breathing.
Yeah.
At the memorial for Tommy.
And then Sick Boy says,
because that's the solidification that it was his. Kid.
yeah. And then he says, well, Renton, you sold Tommy.
Oh, it
his
was the other way
first."
around. So first of all, they're out trying to memorialize
Yeah.
Tommy.
Mm-hmm.
Spud's
and
out there doing his
Sick
own thing.
Boy
That's
is
right.
like, this is bullshit. Like his
I'm
death
not
is on
feeling
your
it, yeah.
hands, that kind of thing. And so then Renton flips it and he's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, if you're such high and mighty, you let your kid die.
Right.
She would have been a
exactly.
woman by now. Made a
And so they immediately go
Yeah.
home and use
Yeah.
heroin.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
Just because that
Um,
sent them both over there. I think that was,
Super
really
important, yeah.
important.
They even kind of foreshadowed it in a way because they're like, oh, we're doing this. I wonder what other warm, fuzzy feelings we're going to bring up now and like
Mhm.
what other things we can relive. And it was
Yeah,
heroin.
so that was
Yeah.
that was
Uh,
very
s-
poignant.
Spud ends up reconnecting with his ex-girlfriend, showing the things he'd been writing.
And the last thing she says is,
I think I have a title. And then Sick Boy goes back to his bar and starts
Mhm.
working there.
Mhm.
And,
and they
Begbie's
have locked Begbie in a trunk and
Yeah.
set the
Dropped
car
Yeah,
in
we-
front of the
front of
prison.
the-
yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's it.
that was as quick as we could do it, I think. There's a
Yeah.
lot in those.
There's a whole lot.
There's a lot
The
probably we
film is
skipped.
very rich.
Go
It's
watch
not
'em.
long, but it's
Yeah.
very rich.
Go watch them.
So there's
Pause
a lot
it
of stuff.
after you listen to all
And
that.
hopefully this wasn't your first time hearing all the events that occur in those movies.
Yeah.
But the way we've been saying is also kind of the way it plays out, because to me that was the one big thing that I noticed is that the editing in there is it's crazy good, but it's also like you're going at 1,000,000 miles per hour
Now,
sometimes.
we had a brief conversation about this. Danny Boyle being an auteur.
Yes. So for those who don't know, auteur, it's when I went to school, they called it auteur theory. And it's a theory that there is one sole author of the piece of art or work that you're making. And why it's called a theory is because, you work with a producer, you work with the screenwriter, you work with an editor. It should be a whole thing, a whole collaboration that everyone is a piece of the storytelling. But the auteur theory denotes that there is one person that's in control of everything. I'm a believer of an auteur theory, that there are people who do it, but I do believe that filmmakers do use collaboration, but some of them, I wouldn't call them auteurs at some points. It's not like it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just that there's a spectrum of filmmaking and storytelling.
Like we
that
talked about,
one
Wes
place falls
Anderson as
into
an
one.
auteur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Danny Boyle falls into that category.
Listen to that episode now. Wherever you listen to podcasts. But yeah, so Danny Boyle as an auteur, he's the writer, he's the director of both these films. He did films such as like 28 Days Later, some like Millionaire, Steve Jobs. Am I missing any? I'm missing some.
Shallow
I mean,
Grave
The
was-
Beach.
28, you say 28 weeks
Beach,
later?
Yeah.
28
I mean,
days.
days later.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I can't remember the name of his first film right now,
Is
but
it
it was
Shallow
with
Grave?
Shallow Grave, yes,
Yeah.
and it's with Ewan McGregor and Christopher Eccleston.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I mean, with that being said, like to me, it's an adaptation, but then also with Danny Boyle's like stamp, like there's a lot of things in there that kind of blend the surrealistic versus
Mhm.
the realism that is prevalent in Danny Boyle's films, which I think are great ways to utilize the medium. Right now, we're in a place where we just expect narrative or fantasy, where it's like fiction or nonfiction, but then Danny Boyle allows you to kind of play within the mindscapes of people, versus just purely like, I think this and I feel that. And it's like, okay, well, he said it. Versus like now we get to see that he's inside the toilet, like
Mhm.
things like that are like stuff like that. I mean, it goes without saying, we'll do a little bit of information as well. The first movie, box office, 72 million, 1996. And the second one, 20 years later, 41.6 million. Now, different box office scales, I would say. 20 years difference, 20 years, money has changed. But they were received with high critical acclaim.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think if you talk to, the snobby film people that I associate myself with, but even like casual audiences as well as majority audience will say that both films are great in their right. If they don't like it, they won't like both. If they love it, they love both. You know what I mean? Like they kind of go
Makes
part and
sense.
parcel with each other. So,
I like that.
any books that we want to
think-
discuss?
I think the second one, it was interesting watching it. So like right after the first one. It almost feels like I think I liked the first one more, but I feel like the second one was a more important movie.
Well, it's meant to feel a little slower as well. Like
Yeah.
there's been some interviews where he's talked about, these guys are junkies 20 years later. They're not peak
Yeah.
physical health in any
Magically
way.
have lived.
And
Yeah.
there's also a big parallel that he talks about in a couple interviews where he's talking about the use of freeze framing.
Mhm.
And in the
Mm.
first one, there are these long pauses where it's a magical moment for everybody, or something. It's something to remember for everybody. Like when Begbie throws the glass, you pause there, talk about it a little bit, da da da.
Yep.
And he says in this film he uses it, and they're after serious drug use and stuff like that, he's like their brains aren't functioning at their fullest capacity. They've
almost like a
burned one
language
too many
that he
brain
built.
cells. Yeah. So they have these small freezes on really mundane stuff.
Mhm.
And they're supposed to be moments where they kind of mirror other ones from the first film.
Yeah.
But it's just a blip on their map now towards the end of their.
Well, there's some
midway through
shots
the-
that are exactly the same.
Oh yeah,
you know, like-
absolutely. But just the freeze frame specifically.
Yeah.
or the scenes like where Renton gets in front of a car
Mhm.
and he looks up at the driver
laughs.
and
Yeah.
he laughs. The
Mhm.
same exact
Or
thing.
Spud
exact-
remembering.
The same kind of tracking shot of the toilet walking towards it.
And he opens the first toilet is
Mhm.
kind of like
Disgusting.
the
He's
worst
like, "Ugh."
toilet in Scotland. from
And now
the
he won't
first
touch
one.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
When he dove in it
He
before.
chose the other toilet
Yep.
this time.
The same angles they use, like in the second one when Sick Boy and Renton like make off with their first deal, and they're in the soccer field and it's raining,
Mhm.
kind of going back to their glory days of when they were playing football.
Yeah.
I think that I heard a criticism that people thought it was just wrought with nostalgia. That's what I wanted.
Well, that's part of the story.
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
it is.
that
It's
is.
all about nostalgia, and he
Yeah,
even
it's kind
says
of the
you're
point.
There's a quote from the film that says you're something
Well,
with your
because they
nostalgia.
were when they
Renton.
were doing when they were going out to kind of memorialize Tommy,
Yeah.
Sick Boy's like, I don't feel it,
Yeah.
Renton. This
Yeah.
is just
You're-
nostalgia.
Yeah, it's
like
just nostalgia. You're just
You're
you know-
reminiscing
Yeah.
about your own past.
Yeah,
or something.
yeah, and I think that's why it's so the second one's so
Yeah.
satisfying.
That's part
is
of the point of the
because,
film.
it's sort of wrapped up.
Yeah.
These loose ends.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
the thing-
it's all the things that happened in the first one. I feel like kind of set the stage, and then like the second one, it just
Answers.
every scene means so much more,
Right.
and has so much more gravity to it,
Mm-hmm.
because of that.
Right.
like there's
and-
a
and-
difference between how this sequel like matches the same actions but with different context
Mm-hmm.
versus The Hangover, where it's
Which is the same
exact
movie three times.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The third one's different. The third one's actually different.
Oh, okay.
It's stupid though, and because they don't even get drunk. And that, but I mean, with this one, yeah, there's a lot of play on it because what Danny Boyle really said, he's like he wants the film world to have grown 20 years as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah.
He wants people who watched it 20 years then to have 20 years of life experience and bring in different baggage or different things to watch this film.
Mhm.
And the thing is, yeah, you do get wrapped up like, oh, that's what they did before because the characters at that time are doing the same
Right.
thing.
So yeah, I
Mhm.
didn't think it was wrought with nostalgia. I mean,
Yeah.
I liked that it was. I
Yeah.
wanted.
It
I
wasn't a
wanted to
crutch, is what you're
remember.
saying.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't think it was.
I think it
this
was a
little
strength.
poofy film that I was like, oh yes, oh I remember it was
Yeah.
juicy with
Well,
nostalgia.
it's also that ideal that people don't change that much.
right.
That's
So
true.
there's certain things they say move. Like there's a scene where when he first decides to get off smack in the first one, he like rolls backwards and stands up,
Yeah.
and he does that again as soon as he wakes up on the pool table after Sick Boy
Yeah.
knocks him out. He rolls off the same exact
Mhm.
way.
I would critique that criticism of that of well, like you have to ask like yeah surface level the same shots the same things same locations. It's like but why?
Yeah,
Well,
why?
yeah,
'Cause they're
there's
re-
meaning.
there's
Exactly.
meaning
They're
behind each
visiting it 20 years
Mhm,
later
mhm.
and how those events affected their lives and that are like pushing through this narrative of the second film.
yeah.
Right.
So it's like you have to understand why they're doing it versus like isn't this the same shit?
Yeah.
Because that's what you say yourself
Well,
in
like
Hangover
it's
too. the same shit.
essentially. I've always felt like the second film was like the first one. There's all this chaos and they kind of run from everything, and this is just them having to face everything they did in the first film in a sense. So you
To-
need that.
It's like them having to turn around and actually look at what they were running
yeah,
from.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It reminded me a lot of, and I don't know how many of you have seen it, is Clerks 2.
Yeah.
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 Nope.
Is going back
seen
to Clerks, which was I think it was a very important movie. And
Yeah.
It
something
was
that I really
Kevin
appreciate.
Smith's career.
To Kevin Smith and to me. And Clerks 2, I feel like it was, you could make the same arguments like, oh, it's just nostalgia. It's like, no, but it's like there's a reason for it. The characters talk about it specifically.
But have the characters grown? Are they
Right.
doing different things, or are they doing
And
the
that's
exact
kind of the-
same movie? No,
that's right.
It's different.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, digging into what the movie is about and what they're talking about, it's like the choose life thing is actually really, really important in terms of what they're talking about, because now that they're realizing that they've gone 20 years and there's all this mundaneness, because that's, I mean, essentially choose life is just you're picking the normality of life, choosing all these different things.
And he has a scene in the restaurant
Where he
with the girl.
explains it
Yeah,
and
um,
updates it.
Brilliantly
Yeah.
updated. Choose
Yeah.
Facebook, choose Instagram,
Yeah.
choose all these things that
Yeah.
Choose your ex.
Well,
choose
it's interesting
slut
because
shaming or whatever, you know.
like the very beginning where it's like, why don't I choose life? Well, because like imagine the best orgasm you've ever had times 20 or whatever.
And you want
And
to
it's
get
like-
close to it.
But that to me, like after seeing that, that was him talking about heroin was an excuse.
Uh-huh.
Like to me, that wasn't why you were living or not living your
No,
life.
because he
the
still
way-
is the same. 20
Right.
years later, he still has a huge void in his life.
Well,
Yeah.
even after, like in the first one, after they stop taking heroin and do the heist job, and that whole thing happens,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like your problem is the people that you've
In your
chosen to
life.
hang
Yeah.
out with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't quit the people.
It's not the substance. It's the it's
No,
the
and
people.
actually, there's a lot of illusions in the first one that the substance is just a backdrop.
Yeah.
So
Right.
in the sense of like he references his mom illegally taking prescription pills.
Yeah.
They have the whole scene with Begbie and Tommy where they're like, "No way, I put that shite in my body," and he's
Yeah.
smoking and taking shots and has a beer
Yeah.
and fighting people, and it's like everyone has their vices,
poison,
but
yeah.
it's the
Mhm.
people you surround yourself with.
You would say the movie's about a bunch of people who are addicted to heroin, but the subtext of the film is like the addiction is also runs deeper.
Yeah, and I think
Mm.
the point, at least what I got from the point of the book and the first movie especially, is that at the time, and I talked with Caitlin a little bit about this, at that time, no one was treating junkies as humans.
Mm.
They were
Yeah.
thinking them as, like, there's that scene in the first one where someone wrote plague on the
Yeah.
front of Tommy's
Tommy's.
door, right? So at the time, with the AIDS epidemic and stuff like that, it was like, oh, keep away from me, junkie. And we have that same
Not
issue
even
now with
human.
like homeless vets and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
So I think the importance of these films and the book, especially the first one, was to hold a mirror up to someone and be like, look, you're all addicts of different things. They're still human. You have to remember that. And I think
Just
they
as
did a really
flawed.
good job. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, Tommy, he was addicted. He was addicted to love. That's
to
what I
his
think.
girlfriend and
Yeah,
to
he was-
working out,
Exercise.
probably.
Yeah.
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 Exercise. So I mean, it's like every character has something.
The great outdoors.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I like the second one so much because it is a wrap up, but it's also kind of an explanation of like, and it takes that addiction and what it does in your life a little bit further. It is kind of like, I think I was talking to Caitlin about it, where it's kind of like an aftermath movie.
Mhm.
It's like, this is what
Yeah.
has happened. This is where we're at now.
Consequences to your actions.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you have Spud, who's like just completely disconnected from the people that are important to him, because he just, even to this day, until recently, he was
Still doing drugs.
still doing drugs. And yeah, I mean, you get to see the realization that Renton is having, where it's like, okay, I chose this. I chose to run away. I chose this, but maybe I was actually missing something
Mhm.
Hmm.
this
Well,
whole time, maybe.
Yeah. It's when Ali, you watch the both of them back to back.
Yeah.
And what you get from that is the last scene in the first one. He's kind of running away. He's walking, but he's running away, and then you cut to the first scene of the next one, and he's running on the treadmill, and that's pretty metaphorical,
And it's
right?
interlaced with that first scene. And he's
And
backing
it's
up,
cutting back
coming
and
into
forth,
focus.
and so he's running and running, but he's not getting anywhere.
Mhm.
He's just running in place.
Yeah.
And then he has a heart attack. So it's like this new life that he chose, this new addiction. It almost kills him, just like heroin did.
Heroin
Yeah.
would have. Yeah.
So there's no difference between where
One
he is.
addiction.
And so that's why I think he has to go back
And
to
for-
come to terms with his past and his friends.
And for our delicious, I'll call them delicious
Uh-huh.
listeners. I mean, what I always say, someone looks in the mirror, it means something. When someone washes their face with water, it means something.
Mhm.
Someone's running and they're not moving. Or they're
Yeah.
on a treadmill or on a bike or on an elliptical.
Mhm.
They're using motion on something that gives them zero locomotion.
And no one helps him. They
Yeah,
all
no,
look.
they're all just kind
Nobody
of
helps
standing there
him.
going, "What?"
I mean, that's kind of like how the opening of the first one is, right? With Tommy being bombarded by the entire football team and,
And
no
no
one
one's
helps
helping
him.
him.
Mhm.
Except, and it's like now it's Renton.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now he's so far away from all his friends that no one can help him.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So It's cool. There's a lot of
There are-
symbology in here.
Yeah, symbology.
Symbology.
Then I was telling Delicious Josh that even
It's
when
happening.
Renton's in
happening.
that glass, I guess it's a bathroom maybe,
Oh,
that
yeah.
glass
Yeah.
walls, and he's like boxed in, and Begme's outside,
Oh, yeah.
you know, trying to get to him, and he's literally having to look at himself,
Mm.
Face himself. yeah.
face himself, and this whole room is just mirrored. And I'm like,
Mhm.
well, that
Well,
was
I mean,
no mistake.
It's
you
and
know,
he's talking about, and suddenly his life is flashing before him, right? And he's
Yeah.
remembering.
And he's
remembered.
remembering,
I just remembered that that classroom with da 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 da. So-
So he's having to reflect,
Yeah.
literally.
Franco don't
so
give a shit.
there's tons of stuff like that
Franco
in both
does
of
not
them.
care.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there's so much of that in both of them.
Oh yeah.
And there's a lot of reflection, I think, for two
Self.
of us, it's seeming like.
Yeah.
Three of us. I don't know how
I just
many.
reflected long ago.
Oh,
That's all.
okay. Got it.
Me and Ollie
I
will be
think
here.
since it's such a general but also specific theme, I think a lot of us can be very easily affected by this topic.
Mhm.
And as I said in the beginning, I had multiple breakdowns while watching this. Tom and Corey probably didn't know I was watching it with them. But
But we saw it after.
yeah, afterwards I was like,
Well, the seal's broken.
yep, seal's broken. Water is gonna go everywhere now.
Out of her
Um,
eyes.
With my eyes, yes.
Thank you, Tom.
You're welcome.
So when this movie opened, I knew I was in so much trouble.
Yeah.
The moment, I mean, it opened with like the soccer game and
Running.
the running, and then it went into the Mother Superior
Yeah.
area, and I was like, oh no, I really misunderstood what this movie is about.
I made a huge
Like,
mistake.
I really know.
Today we learned the importance of research.
Yes.
It's gonna be a big
Oh, man,
lesson.
Did we ever? Well, and
Caitlin's gonna
So-
come with
some
papers
of
next
that-
time. I researched
Oh
our
my
next
God.
project.
yeah, my thesis.
So I brought the wiki.
I like going into movies blind. Like I did this with The Room
Mm.
as well.
Oh.
I had no idea what that movie was about when I went to watch it, and it amplified the movie experience times 1,000 because you're going in 100% blind. And this I was like, it's about drugs and whatever. But I didn't know how
Deep.
weirdly specifically tied I would be to this. In my first year of college, I had a friend OD on heroin and they didn't make it. And it was very jarring because like I knew I had a lot of other friends that were on some very hard drugs around that time because I knew these people when I was in high school. Like when I was 16, I knew these people.
You kind of saw it happening.
Yeah. Like I saw the descent. For this person specifically, they were like messaging me and I could tell that they were surrounded by these really terrible people that really were like the characters in this movie. I have met them. I know them.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
So seeing the OD, seeing, the dynamic, because this person kept getting put on house arrest and arrested, and they would be confined to home. And when you're bored as fuck,
Mhm.
you're gonna go back to the things that make life seem more interesting.
So this film had a very visceral reaction for you.
Super, super visceral.
Mhm.
And having to relive all those memories, and also you feel like they all have their own specific weights
Mhm.
with like what they carried with them. And this is my take on the situation that happened, but this guy was, and I was very young at the time, but he was like, I can get clean if I move into your place. Like when you get your own place, I'll move in, I'll do whatever, I'll pay rent. I know I couldn't bring that into our home. And so it was, I got my own apartment finally in December, and in February he OD'd. And I remember sitting at the kitchen table with his dad, and he opened his wallet and he had my senior picture as the first picture in his wallet. And I took on the weight that somehow I didn't do enough.
Yeah, like kind of like survivor's remorse.
Right.
Where it's kind of like I survived this and I could have done something more.
Exactly. And so all of those themes were in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
that's-
Now I know the initial reaction was very visceral, but like reflecting on it after a couple days.
Well, even the same day, because Corey texted me after the fact, was like, "Hey,
Here's my ideas about
I think
the
I
So-
did too. So
it was a great movie. We had a good discussion. You cried in the bathroom for a long time. Are you okay?" And and I think even that night, because when I was driving on the way home, it made me, despite being so upset, it made me realize the importance of like film and art and being able to communicate your story. It's true. It really is true. Like I don't know how I could sum up all the things that happened.
It's a
and be able
device
to
that you need to take care with.
Yeah.
Right.
Film
Right.
is a device you need to take care with.
Michael Bay.
He's like almost on
Wow.
the bottom of
Wow.
my list
Wow.
of other people who have did that. Anyways.
But no, I mean, coming out of that movie actually made me feel more alive and more care for my friends, and it gives you kind of that new perspective of like, oh well, yeah, this did happen, and closure has happened since then,
Right.
even though it's like still an emotional thing.
Well, I find that like it's like film and art to a greater extent is at its best when you can so greatly relate with the specific
Yeah.
events that are happening.
I mean,
You relate to its truth.
And you're like, I'm not alone. I'm a human, because there's other
I mean,
humans.
that's essentially what music is too. I mean, like
Mhm.
any art form, but like just relating to what I'm familiar with is like as a musician, there was no greater feeling of writing a song and seeing people sing with you, because you're like, oh shit, they feel
Or
that
messages of like, this is my
Yeah.
song, and you're
too.
like,
Yeah.
the validation.
I'm going to bring in some entourage in here, and there's a character who's like, I don't call them movies, I make films, right? And
You've said that so many times.
I love it. And I call it, this is to me, this is the difference between movie and film.
Yeah.
Movie
Yeah.
is something I could just turn off my brain,
Michael
watch
Bay.
and enjoy it. But film is film. Film is
still
like,
on that, huh?
Just tonight. Yeah.
it's
Okay.
to me, it's so big.
Forgive
It's bigger
Michael
than
Bay.
what it is. It's
Forgive him.
less than 100 years old, and we're still trying to figure out what extent does it use. You
Yeah.
know, like we're changing how the Academy Awards are going and all that stuff. And something that was brought up in school when I was watching it is called the socio-political economic discussions.
Right.
And you have to have all your films discuss those things. If your film doesn't do it, then it might as well.
It's a
Like-
movie.
Well,
Yeah.
Those are good too.
but I mean, there has to be some kind of commentary, and we've talked
Mm.
about how like some pieces of films are like time capsules of their time, and I think those are important, because if your film kind of doesn't stamp itself anywhere, even if it's a period piece or even if it's in present time, if it's a period piece and can still talk about problems that happen now, like you're doing your job,
Mm.
because
Yep.
art and business is tough. It's tough
Yeah.
to mix both, but this film beautifully does.
Well, I
it.
think
Mm.
Danny Boyle, I think everything kind of, it's like lightning in a bottle. Like, so like the thing about this film is it does seem timeless. Like it doesn't
It'll be a
really,
classic.
it
Mhm.
doesn't,
It is a
the only
classic.
thing that really gives away when it was made is maybe the music, but even in time, that'll just be like a
But
choice.
some of the music is
No, the
included in
music
the
is-
second one too.
Yeah, the same
Yeah,
music.
that's what I
same
mean. But
thing.
that's what I
Yeah.
mean. Like at some point, it just becomes,
It's more of
becomes
a-
timeless. Because there's a lot of films from the 90s where you look back and you're just like, people wore that?
Yeah.
People did these things? Cell phones were this big? Like, they don't have any of that in this film.
The
And-
second
and-
one they have.
Oh,
technology,
absolutely.
yeah.
But specifically the first
the
one is
first
just
one.
like it's less of a time capsule. It is at the same time, but their costumes, all that kind of stuff seems very like you could watch this at any time and
well,
still
just the
relate.
piece of information that you gave me about how the times were
Mm-hmm.
informs me. They go part and parcel. The informs the time. The film informs the time, and the time informs the film.
Mhm.
And so you have that piece of context. It's kind of like, I want this piece of steak on this Ritz cracker, but the cracker saltiness is going to help the savoriness of the steak.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to help each other at the same time. But also like the film is kind of representation of how kind of critically looked upon films were at the time. Because like I said, like it reminds me so much of Clockwork Orange, and I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that the fucking volcano room is
I was going to say there
based
are
off the Milk
so
Room.
many.
Yeah.
There are tons of references to Clockwork Orange. in
yeah,
the
and
movie.
the aesthetic of how it's shot just
Mhm.
gives me like, God, this looks like Clockwork Orange, and I don't know why. And then I actually had to like take a second, reflect, and look upon it. I'm like, and watch it multiple times.
Mhm.
I watched both films like 3 times to prepare
Yeah.
for
Whoa.
this. I'm
Same.
like, am I missing something or
Oh
not?
no, because I watched it 4 with you guys.
Yeah.
Mm,
So
yeah. Well, the timeline is a little funky because the books are definitely 80s.
Yeah.
The films aren't specifically, but I read something about the new one. They were using apps that were invented in 2016.
Yeah.
Oh.
So if
Filters
it
and
was 20
stuff.
years before that,
Yep.
then it was in the 90s.
Yep.
So that's the only like stamping of
Mhm.
actual time.
It's so minute.
But it's very vague.
Yeah.
You know, it's sort of vague.
But you almost don't even care.
You don't care. You
No.
know, this isn't a period
what
piece.
you're interested in is these people
Well,
and
the
how
cool
they're
thing is that like he
experiencing
says, choose Facebook or choose Instagram.
Uh-huh.
Even if we have
wherever
the
you want
new
to
whatever,
spew your bile on.
yeah, whatever we have, it'll be the same language.
Yeah.
He could have said
Uh-huh.
MySpace, and then the film could have been released in 2006,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
and we still would have gotten the same context now.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool thing.
Can I move us along to favorite parts and characters?
We can.
How does everyone feel about that?
Sure.
Pretty good.
Yeah. Do you
Sure.
have something you want to say?
That's fine with me.
I guess
Josh,
you're gonna start us off.
Josh had mentioned though that you had some kind of connection with this and
Yeah.
with addiction and whatnot as well.
I mean, it's
I think we
You know.
Josh and I just come from families of addiction.
yeah.
Oh,
And so it's one of those things that it's what I like about these movies is that yes, it's a jaunty romp through addiction,
mhm.
but I think that sometimes people
Nice elevator pitch.
try to simplify addiction,
mm.
and they try to say it's this or that, and it's black and white, but it's not.
And that's the point of the film.
And that's
Mhm.
the point of the film is that
Yeah.
it's much. Oh, you can quit anytime you. Here's the deal.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things that we can get into a discussion about willpower and all this kind of stuff, but what I like about this movie is I feel like it sums up addiction.
Mhm.
It really shows you the inside and the person behind addiction
And
and,
I mean,
the feeling of it, and
the hypocrisy as well is like with the mom telling him you're gonna get clean, all the while she's taking prescription drugs
Uh-huh.
that
Yeah.
are illegal. Is just like another step in the like, well, hey,
Yeah.
take a look at yourself first, real quick.
yeah,
And
Can you stop that?
I liked it when, in the first one they had to do the skag deal, and then like Renton, has to fucking, test out if the product
Mhm.
is good. And he doesn't go off the bandwagon and just like all of a
No.
sudden start using all over again. But even in the second one where Sick Boy and him have to use it
They don't go back.
and
to
they don't
it.
go back to it, but then Spud is like tearing himself apart because he's watching
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
he wants, and he's like,
Well,
And
Sick
his-
Boy's got cocaine now.
yeah,
Yeah,
he's got
right.
cocaine.
He's
They
just
each
got
have their
another
things.
something.
Renton,
Yeah.
Renton
Yeah.
has running, Sick Boy has cocaine,
Yeah.
and Spud has his stories.
And construction. I'd say both,
Yeah.
part and
Uh-huh.
parcel. And Begbie still has fighting.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Bigby has revenge.
revenge. So Corey, what are your favorite parts and characters?
Oh gosh. I'll try not to take a lot of time. I will name a few and then I'll spurt some out later. Well, I already
feel
said
like
one
it's
of my
gonna be a lot of spurting out favorite parts.
Yeah.
It's gonna be the same for a lot of us.
I mean I said one of my favorite lines in the series comes
Yeah.
from Begbie. But I mean the whole as disgusting as it is, the toilet scene has always been
Oh,
something
Which-
that
And Corey,
remember?
behind the scenes,
yeah.
it was a toilet that was cut in half, and
Yep.
they just made a little chute, a poopy chute.
And he
Oh.
slid down
And
and
it
he
was
was fine.
chocolate.
It was all chocolate.
They
and
used
apparently,
chocolate.
it smelled divine.
It smelled wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm
But
so
I always
glad,
liked
but still,
I always
still
liked
gross.
that scene because it's again it's the parallel between a who you are and a junkie, right? So like anyone else would have been like, well, I lost those, but to Renton, that is literally the symbolism of the rest of his life.
Fucking godsend.
Yeah, it's literally the beginning of the rest of his life. So he will do anything to go get it. And that whole scene, it's just that's where the movie all of a sudden you're like, oh, this isn't going to be a normal film. It's going to be a little surreal. We're going to take some dives, deep cerebral stuff.
Which I normally don't like.
I do.
Like
I love
with
it.
like stuff like Big Fish and stuff like that. I normally don't like those, but then this played off really
It
well.
depends on
Mhm.
how it's executed for
Yeah.
me. I love Big Fish, for example. But for this worked really well. I like
Well,
that.
that's kind of one of the scenes where it first starts going into that surrealism.
Yeah, that's
Or
what I was
that
saying.
It's just kind of realistic, and then, oh,
Yeah.
this is a different movie than I thought it was.
Uh-huh.
I was no joke. I was gonna maybe like skip that scene or skip ahead. 'Cause
Yeah.
I was starting to not be able to handle it.
Yeah.
And
Then it got into the surreal.
and then he just like his whole body went through it. I'm
You're
like,
oh wait,
oh, okay.
oh
And
wait.
you know, you did that's wrought with symbolism, baptism, all
Yep.
that other stuff.
It's there's so much to unpack with these films. I'd say that's one of my favorite. We'll go around. I don't want to take anybody else's, so I'll just do one from each. That's probably one of my favorite scenes from that. And then in the second film, I'd have to say, well, that's tough because I like that whole film as a whole. If I had to pick one specific one, maybe when Renton first comes back to see Sick Boy for the first time. That whole scene is
Yeah.
it's hilarious to me because they're having this like civil discussion and then Sick Boy just hits him with a fucking pool cue. And they're just like, I mean, like I grew up around, Dustin and Mikey, two brothers who the way they fought was very reminiscent of what they're doing, like running around things and throwing shit at each other, and it looked like two brothers fighting to me. And so I really, that whole scene, I think I giggle through, even though they're trying to kill each other at one point, but they don't.
It is funny.
It is. It's. I mean, the fact that the guy is just sitting at the bar and is just covering his drinks
Like,
so that
please
no
don't
glass
get glass
gets in
in
it.
this.
Yeah, they're like 5 years old again. Or the scene where they're both on coke and trying to explain to her about football, and
Oh my
That
god.
was pretty great.
and then she starts speaking Bulgarian, and they're going,
Yeah.
She goes,
yeah.
why don't you just make love to each other right now?
Yeah.
Why don't you just, and yeah.
Ollie Oxenfree.
For the first movie, I guess favorite have to be a positive scene?
no,
No.
no, not at all.
Because to me,
What's
it
your
wa-
favorite part?
to me it was the baby scene.
Like the crawling on the wall, or when you
No,
realize
when you
baby's
realize
dead?
it's dead, but it wasn't that. It was the aftermath. It was like
I'm gonna
seeing
cook
how
up.
they all reacted to it and
Yeah.
seeing Sick Boy cry.
And like I thought it was really interesting that Sick Boy's response is to fucking say something, Mark.
Yeah,
You're like,
Cooking up.
whoa.
yeah. Because that was the turning point for me with the movie. So that was the first one I would say, other than the tossing of the glass over the shoulder.
That line
That
is so.
line
I mean, that's the
is
reason they
so
brought it
good.
back in the second film.
Yeah, it's so good.
Glass, they got glass. No two ways about it.
And just like the initial scream, you're
Yeah.
like, oh god.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
what
And then he
happened?
just flips the knife and slams it on the table.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, here we go. Oh shit.
I don't know if you noticed this, Future Foe.
yeah.
The kid was playing Destiny at the end of the movie when
Was
they were,
he?
when they
he
were-
was.
I was
when they were
thinking. I
talking.
was.
He
I
was
thought I
looking
saw
over
it,
and he was playing Destiny.
and I was gonna like back. I was gonna rewind it to make sure, but I was like, no, it wouldn't be Destiny.
I saw it and I was like, I know that overlay.
That's
Yeah, that's like those colors. That's
I know that
red
hub.
and purple. That's fucking Destiny.
yeah.
You mentioned there was a scene you rewound a bunch.
Yes. And that's
I hope
my-
it's not
and
the
that's-
baby scene.
No, it's in the second film. I
I
think.
gotta get more of that.
No.
Pain and misery.
Oh god, it was
Second-
second one, and it was just them sitting like at the couch, and it was Sick Boy and Mark, and they were just like chit chatting, and he's like, yeah, she left because she said it was messy or something.
It's not messy.
And he's like, it's not messy, is it? He's like, no, it's masculine. That was like one of my favorite lines, or actually my favorite line in that second one. And
it's masculine.
it made me laugh so much.
masculine.
I went back and like that whole conversation was just, I feel like it was like
Well,
very
that's
off
at
the
the
cuff.
part.
very,
Their,
like,
their guards are down at that
yeah, the
point.
guards are down. It was a really cool. I dug that scene a lot.
And seeing him bleach his roots.
It is
With the toothbrush.
the next
Yeah.
scene.
Yeah.
Ollie, you just became more dude in my mind. I don't know, it's masculine. It's masculine. It's like
I was
wonder
like-
how Ollie's room looks. Like
I look
now.
around my room and I see like clothes like on the
Strewn
chair, and I'm
around.
like, it is masculine. Thank
Oh
you.
my
Oh no.
JK.
For
But
me,
Use a clean room.
Can I also say the from?
are you going to use my favorite part?
Hygiene.
I don't know.
Please.
Well,
Okay, I have one. I want to say. Go ahead.
let's go through the room. For the first film, one of my favorite parts, I think, it's probably I don't know. I really, really enjoyed the moment where Spud and Tommy are talking about not having sex, and
Mhm.
then the girls in the bathroom are talking about
Shopping.
Yeah, shopping.
Shopping.
And then they both have like, what are you talking about? Football. What are you talking about? Shopping. I really like that. I don't know why. It was just a really funny, like informed conversation of intercutting, like good editing,
Mhm.
how they're talking about the same thing, but
From different
from
points
different
of view.
points of view. And, I mean, obviously there's some parts that I think other people will have, but I'll just pick that one as a really good one. And then I think the second one, my favorite moment was actually when Spud was committing suicide and Renton went to go save him.
And he catches
And he
him. That
catches
beautiful
him.
Oh,
because he's
yeah.
got, Spud on the roof and he falls backwards.
They use
and he
the
catches him.
metaphor of a different method. of
It's so
suicide.
good, and it's the cut on action, so it feels really like it feels very like you're rewarded for
Yeah.
watching it,
It's
and so
visceral.
it's good. It's
And
really,
then
it's
they
really
hit
good.
you with a puke in a bag.
Yeah. And it's disgusting
they don't
puke, and
mess
I'm like,
around.
oh god! And then when he goes up and just like the ton of it just comes out of his back,
Yeah.
I'm just like,
The other piece of symbolism that I really liked was
Symbology?
was when he was overdosing and like he falls back, but then the floor keeps sinking.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
I thought that was really neat.
And that's
Oh, in
kind
the
of like
first
when
one?
they were tearing the bag off of his
No.
face.
Mhm.
I
Yeah, the
thought you were
first
talking
one.
about the first one when he's like literally going into his
First
grave.
one when,
Yeah,
when
Mother's
he's over.
Superiors.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then when he's tearing the bag off of his face, that's
Mhm.
it's kind of like he's being birthed.
Birthed.
Yeah,
That sort of looks like
Mhm.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
His new life.
It wasn't. It
Yeah,
wasn't your
new
favorite
line.
part.
Okay, well it might be Bonnie's. So
oh,
Yeah.
I
I have
think
one more from each.
maybe it's not my most favorite scenes, but they're the ones that stuck in my head and I couldn't get rid of them.
Yeah.
Like images, like the baby fucking crawling on the ceiling and him screaming like that. The baby dying, Renton overdosing and from the first movie and falling through the floor.
Yep.
And he gets sucked through the floor, and
With
then
the carpet goes.
you
down.
start hearing that song. You know, it's a perfect day.
Oh, yeah.
Da, 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 and this beautiful kind of calm song. So you know, the bathroom, the poop, the stuff that you're like, oh God, I'll never forget that.
Yep.
I will never forget the flinging poop and everybody's eating like a full
breakfast.
English or a full Scottish breakfast.
Yeah.
There's lots of beans. It's just, it's hideous.
Yeah.
And he can't even look
glorious.
at it. He's like, oh.
Oh God. But the second movie, bar none, my very favorite part of it is the very last scene. Where he is finally able to put
Oh.
Iggy Pop on.
Yep.
Because he's finally able to go back there because he couldn't do it
He
before.
freaked out in the first one. Yeah.
Put that song on, and then you intercut him ODing on heroin, bending backwards, and just bending backwards dancing.
Mm-hmm.
And then he ends up dancing to this song just joyously.
It's
and
the
then
would you say it's
200-mile
the two
room.
parts of his life basically finally coming together?
finally coming together. He's finally accepting it. And then that amazing pull out.
Yeah.
This
That
to
real,
infinity.
that real room that
Yeah.
they made.
Yeah, to infinity. And it just makes every time I see it, I want to cry for some reason.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because it's
yeah.
so like the visuals, the music.
I think I might have the first time I watched it.
Yeah,
that
just it's
last scene.
so juicy and wraps it up, and you're like, oh, it's so satisfying.
You know,
And Ewan's got that dance down.
Yeah.
In an interesting way,
Little hip
both
wibble.
films have a really good way of getting you really low
Mm-hmm.
and then really high at the end.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like you feel
Yeah.
like really good, kind of have
Almost
going
like-
through drugs.
Drugs.
Yeah.
You
exactly.
feel really good to have
Metaphor.
gone through that experience of watching it at the end. You're like, oh my God. Like you feel like you've gone through the emotional roller coaster and then you're kind of at a good closure point at the end of both of them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just that every time I see it, I'm just like, anyway.
Yeah.
Karen?
Boy, it's really hard to pick like a favorite part for this. Mainly because the whole time I was watching it, I was like, okay, I have to think about this and how I can talk about it.
Huh.
But then I was like immediately snapping back to other memories
Yeah.
and being
Shout out
like,
to
oh my God,
Dennis.
this relates to this. Oh my God, this relates to that. So I don't know if I have favorite parts per se. If I had to choose one, it might be Sick Boy and Renton when they're like shooting the shit
In the
and
park?
shooting dogs
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
like pellet
Shooting
For
dogs.
guns.
vegans, you got a fucking wicked shot.
Yeah. No, well that sort of thing is like bonding through wicked behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Seemed that was to me the most fitting descriptor. Like, yeah, the bar fights and whatever.
Mhm.
But those don't feel as like grounded as much because someone would get arrested or something like that. So those seemed a little more fantastical. But like just shooting people and running away, basically. I've seen that kind of stuff happen, like within that friend group I was in. Like I watched them be like, I hate that guy. I'm gonna go punch him in the face. And then they do.
Yeah.
And then they come back and they're like, all right, time to go. And it's like,
Franco all day.
Yeah.
But also remember in like 95, there was no iPhones, there's no cell phones to call the police,
Right.
no cameras. So,
So your phone was
I think they-
outside.
I think that's how Franco got away in that last one. Is no one.
That makes sense.
no one.
Wanted
dared
to
call.
deal with it
Yeah,
Yeah.
because he lives in the town and there's only so many people. That
probably.
makes sense.
I mean, Edinburgh's pretty big.
Oh,
Favorite part
yeah.
for the second one?
I don't know why, but the image of Franco bursting through that mirror thing, like here's Johnny.
Yes.
Here's Johnny.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I don't know why, but that like favorite parts in the second movie are probably just like Franco being fucking insane.
Yeah.
Franco being Franco?
Franco being Franco.
Getting shanked
Robert Carlyle?
through.
Like
Carlo.
Killing it.
The full
all the way
Monty?
through.
Yeah.
getting
Once upon a
completely
time?
stabbed through the side and
Oh,
like
God.
doing all the research
my
and being
liver.
like, oh, you
Do you want me to stab you
fucked
again?
up.
No, that'll do.
no, it's enough.
Enough.
But yeah, that's just like insanity of that character.
When he heard Spud
Tickled me.
stories. Like,
Oh, when he
when
loves
he's like,
Spud stories.
yeah, and he's like hearing what he did, and
He's like, I'm a
"Oh, yeah,
hero."
that's fucking good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he like
This
goes
is
and tries to
like-
find another one.
Yeah.
This is like him hearing
And
like
he says
fan
the
fiction.
line. He
and-
says like, "I'm not wearing hockey pads."
oh my god, he had to slip it in there
I
somewhere.
did.
Bun's
Thanks,
like,
Franco.
That's not the line.
Josh?
Well, my amazing wife.
You can have the same
took
thing.
took my favorite one.
So you
At
can
the
still
end?
take it.
The very end of Trainspotting 2 just it hits me.
Mhm.
Hits me right in the gut.
Right in
A
the
lot
liver?
of my favorite moments are from the second one. I love when they're explaining football to her. I love his new version of
Mhm.
Choose
I-
Life.
That was like
Yeah.
my second.
I just
favorite.
and it's like twice as long as the first one. Because
it's
there
so
is
true.
it is so
Well, there's
true.
so much more,
context to it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
trivial crap that we
Yeah.
do now.
Yeah, and I mean, it's
Very
also I
true.
think it's also the symbolism of like the shit that's built up inside of him for 20 years is
Yeah.
finally like
Yeah.
catharsis of like
because he's like, I
Mhm.
did choose life,
and it
and
fucked
this
me.
is what I got.
Yeah.
Amen.
The music, the music that plays
good.
such a pivotal part about this movie, and the Iggy Pop song "Lust for Life" is like the song for both these movies, and it's just like it's the theme. I mean, it's pretty wild. Like when you listen to it, not many songs hit you in the face right when it starts. And
Oh,
this
yeah.
one does, and it's just like go 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 go. I mean,
Well, it's the perfect theme for. I mean, it's the momentum of the entire first and second film. It's like
Yeah.
that, like, let's get this shit going from the first scene. He gets hit by a car, and we're gonna
Yeah.
go from there.
It's worth forgetting a birthday about.
That getting hit by a car in a lot of films is the climax.
Yeah.
It happens in the first 10 seconds.
That's true. That is true.
Spud and the boxing.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh no, I
When he-
forgot all
Hits
about
the guy
that.
square in the face, and he knocks his ass out.
No real boxing instructor
No.
would
Maybe in
do
Scotland.
That,
You don't know
might
that.
be true,
Yeah, I was
but
gonna
I
say,
hope
you don't
that
know
it's
that.
not.
Yeah, I know.
You don't.
Yeah, in Scotland they don't use pads. It's just
Oh.
all hand and
Oh,
fist.
no.
All in fist.
But the part of the scene is when he walks out
That's how
and
they make haggis.
he's realizing that he's in that same street as like the opening scene from
The first
T1.
version.
Uh-huh.
I mean, any of the transitional moments, and that's what I love. Okay, about both these movies is they handle transitions beautifully. Like, and there is like transitions from one scene into the next, and it's just like it's a movement of the body. It's like it's careful panning. It's stuff like that you're just like, yes, that's what I want.
Well, the cool thing with
Yeah.
the when we talk about matching images and matching stuff, it's like it's showing that time isn't purely linear. Sometimes, like
Yeah.
you're sometimes living in your own past, or your
Mm.
past is going to foreshadow what's going to happen in your future.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Mm-hmm.
What is your secondary favorite parts, Corey?
Oh, so the first one is when Franco finds out that transvestites are a thing.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
all
That's
Renton
good.
says is, "You never know; it could have been wonderful." And he freaks out at that. And then the entire garage chase in Trainspotting 2.
My favorite part's the end of it
Yeah,
Mhm.
because he takes the Viagra.
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
nothing
He has a
happens.
boner.
But then-
at the end, he has
that's exactly. He's like, "Oh, it's adrenaline. That's
Yeah.
right. That's my thing."
That's what
But
gets
like
him
that
off.
the poor guy in the car and like,
Well, that's where one of my favorite quotes comes in. He goes, in 1,000 years, there'll be no guys and no girls, only
Yeah.
wankers.
yeah,
Sounds. What is it? Sounds great to me.
yeah, sounds great
Yeah.
to me.
So
But yeah, those
And-
are my other two favorites.
I think Begbie was. I read somewhere like he was having
Oh.
trouble with his sexuality. Anyway, he was.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's the
The author said,
The author
he
said
wrote
he
him
was
as
gay,
he was a
trying to-
closeted.
That's why he's so
Yeah.
rageful.
That's where all the aggression
And I
comes
think
from.
like Danny Boyle had thought about that before even conversing
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
the writer, and then he was like, "Yeah, that's it,
Yeah.
that's it."
Yeah.
And that's why he has.
Oh,
him
I
in,
didn't know
like,
that. That's cool.
He has him in like bright colored clothing and all this
Uh-huh.
stuff, and he has that giant mustache.
Yeah,
So they kind of look like, you look like a porn star.
yeah.
But it's so rageful and so like
Yeah,
trying not, not to
it's
be.
it's actually a cool thing. I think probably the first iteration of that kind of character that's probably hit film of like someone who's like aggressively, just angry, but then all of a sudden you realize like it's because it's sexual frustration,
Yeah.
Mhm.
misunderstanding of himself.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
he can't get it up for his
Yeah.
wife when he comes home. So,
But
it's
fighting with the
pretty-
guy does
Yeah.
it.
Uh,
yeah.
favorite characters. Let's
I've-
do per movie.
Okay.
Um,
Who wants to start this one off?
I'll start.
Okay.
First one, I think. I mean, Sick Boy. I like his references and all that, and being the movie guy. But like, it's kind of hard not to pick Renton because he's like the main
Mm.
character. And,
Yeah.
and I told Corey like upon initial viewing of it, like rewatching it after like watching it in college, I'm like, it's hard for me to not to like anyone versus Renton.
Mhm.
In the second one, it's very easy to like a lot of other people for their
Mm.
for their whatever quirks. So the first one is definitely gonna be Mark, and then the second one it's Spud. Second one
Yeah.
it's good guy Spud. I mean, there's some portions where I kind of find Begbie pretty funny, but it's Spud. It's mainly going to be Spud.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. The
Okay.
first movie's Renton, the second one's Spud.
Yeah.
But Spud is writing all the stories, and
Spud-
those are just beautiful.
Spud
and-
is kind of like by himself in isolation. And then one of my other favorite sequences are is his montage. Is when he's writing, he's going through withdrawals, and he's building. He's
and
writing.
you can see his show. We were talking about. You can see his shadow
Yes.
suffering, but he's
Yeah.
like not doing it. But his shadow is
Shadow is
like,
doing it.
oh, that was
It's good.
beautiful.
And then I
Leaning
mean,
over the bed, like reaching in the bag.
in the bag for drugs. And,
they
you
play
know,
with shadows as well when Mark
Yeah.
visits his parents, and then
Right.
the
his
same
mom's no
shot from
longer
the
there.
first
The
scene,
mom-
but the
the mom's
shadow's
gone.
there and
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
not sitting there.
So
yeah. So I totally agree with you about the characters.
your copy,
Mhm.
same?
Copy that.
Copy.
Ditto.
Karen,
Uh,
favorite characters per.
definitely Spud for the second one. Just because I like his change and his determination to make things happen. The first one, I what is her name? The teenager,
Okay.
Oh,
well, you
Diane.
got
Diane.
Diane.
Mhm.
Like, as much as I think she is wrong for doing what she did, I'm still like,
You're the most well put together.
you're pretty well put together in comparison to all of these other people.
Ziggy Pop is dead.
So I
Ziggy
think
Pop.
I liked her the best.
Yeah, she was pretty good.
Just because she was like, we're gonna be pen pals, or I'm gonna blackmail you.
Yeah.
Fun
So-
fact: her sex scene with Renton had to be cut down for American audiences because they said it was too raw for American audiences to see that she was enjoying it.
And they also had to re-record the first 20 minutes just
Of
so
the
it would be
first
a little
movie.
bit more acceptable.
Yeah.
Oh,
Not acceptable, but just
what he's talking about
understandable.
is not the 20
Robert-
minutes of that scene, but the 20 minutes of Trainspotting 1. They had
Had
to
to be
redo it because
redubbed.
the accents were so thick.
Mhm.
weird.
Oh, yeah.
Josh,
but yeah.
Also, fun fact: during that sex scene, her brother and her mom surprised her on set
I
that
thought
day.
it was her father and her.
Oh,
I thought it was her mom and
no.
brother.
regardless,
Anyway,
family
her
members.
relatives
Family
were there.
came to visit her on
They had to
surprised her on
sit
set
in
that
the,
day. Yeah, and they had to go. She was like, "No, you sit in the other room. I will come find you after."
Oh yeah.
She was only 19 when she did that role.
Mhm.
Oh my god.
Josh,
She's a
Josh?
nobody. And now,
Characters?
Everyone
Um,
in that film is big.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I'm really drawn to Sick Boy in both.
Yeah.
He's a cool character,
Hmm.
but I don't like him
Fish
as a
money
human
penny.
being.
I mean, no, as a human being, no, but I
That's
just
fair.
like
That
to.
is fair.
yeah,
He's
He's not any
entertaining to
more
watch.
worse than the rest of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Renton. I mean, it
Hold on.
it has to be Spud all day, every day. Like he's just an addict. Like that's the thing. It's like stop
Spud never
shitting
hurt
on
nobody.
addicts.
but the
Right?
thing is, also he has a kind of self pity, but also it's very easy to pity him because he tried to make things right.
Yeah.
He never
and he
hurt
can't.
nobody.
Yeah, and he never hurt anybody. And like at the very end, who does he go to at the very end? He goes to his girlfriend and his son.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah. That's all he wanted, really.
yeah. And he was sorry. He was going to take his life, and his last thing he was going to do is say sorry.
Yeah.
That they deserve more. I love you, Spud.
I love you, Spud.
Corey? Corey Powell? Everyone's
First
gonna
one
be
is
Spud.
it's Mark, but also Franco, because he makes me laugh the most through the whole film. Every time he's on screen, I was pretty much laughing during that scene at one point or another.
He
Um,
who's the actor?
Robert Carlyle,
He plays a very good villain.
Yeah.
Because he makes me literally want to hate, like just hate.
and he's in
him. It's like-
he's Rumpelstiltskin in Once Upon a
you know,
Time.
Once
and
Upon a Time.
he's
yeah. That's how I
very
knew
good.
him, actually.
Full Monty.
He's in 28 Weeks Later too, isn't he?
Mm.
Yeah.
Is
He's
he?
the dad,
I haven't
I
seen
think.
28 Weeks Later, but
Yeah.
Danny Boyle
28
produced
days.
that film.
No.
28
No, he
Weeks
was in
Later was a
Weeks. Oh, Weeks,
sequel.
I don't know.
But Danny Boyle produced it, so it's still
Mhm.
technically under his umbrella. But
Yeah.
so Mark and Franco for the first film, and then I think it's still Mark for the second film.
Okay.
I'm just drawn to the way he interprets things. I think.
That's your Obi-Wan.
Yeah. Hashtag that's my Obi-Wan.
Hashtag Ewan McGregor booty. You get some of it.
Ollie?
It was good.
For me, it's Franco for the first film. For all the reasons you stated.
Franco?
What?
I'm just
And the
surprised
favorite
by
characters
Ali's
you don't
choice.
like?
He
I
is
don't have to
your
like
favorite.
him.
No, yeah, of course. I'm just like,
He's
a
just the
character
most.
can be your favorite character not because they're a good person, just 'cause
Yeah.
you
Because
just-
you love to hate him.
I
He
love
got
Darth
me-
Maul, but he killed Qui-Gon. Fuck
but
him.
he's badass. He looks cool.
Franco
Franco's
Franco
dope.
got me through the part of the like he kept me kind of invested
Oh.
Yeah.
until like the movie actually got me invested. But like
Every time I saw him, I was like, "Fuck you, dude! I hate you. Get the out!"
Well, that's
It was
your
just
opinion,
funny to
Tom.
watch.
No.
like-
I'm just saying, the
just
effect worked
your
on me.
opinion,
Yeah.
man.
he
Hey,
played it
dude.
really well. And for T2, it is Sick Boy.
Safe boy.
Yeah,
Mm.
just because I really enjoyed watching him and his antics and
Yeah.
and he
Eat
had some
that room
really,
service
had
noodles.
really funny dialogue.
Yeah.
Super talented actor.
He's the only one that's
For
not
20
Scottish.
years.
Yeah,
He's English.
And Danny
Yeah.
Boyle wanted him because of Hackers and his Sean Connery
Mhm.
impressions.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Fun fact: the first film he did not take dialect coaching and just practiced as best he could, and went into a bar in I think it was Glasgow,
Glasgow.
He shot most
and
of Glasgow.
just tried out
Mm.
the accent, and no one said anything. So he was like, "Great," and he would like drink before scenes because he was nervous all the time, and now he's sober
And he
completely, and
can't
so
do
he
the
went to a
accent.
dialect coach. And Ewan McGregor made fun of him, and he was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you don't have the liquid courage, huh?"
Mhm.
Aw.
He's like, "It's been 20 years."
Nobody knew he was not Scottish in the movie until
No.
the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Because
Whoa.
he spoke all the time with a Scottish accent. And then they had a cast party or something. And
Method.
Yeah, only
he
like
stopped, and then
only
they're like,
Oh, like
what?
Christian Bale.
only
That's
only
cool.
I think
Yeah.
only Ewan and Spud knew.
Oh, yeah.
That was
and
it.
also,
Wow.
And Danny Boyle.
Ewan and Ewan. Two
Yeah,
Ewans.
2 Ewans.
Yeah.
And then Spud, who was another Ewan, I don't know,
Second Ewan.
played Renton on the stage performance.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So it was funny because he knew the entire movie back and forth because he'd perform as Renton.
Right.
Mhm.
But Danny Boyle was like, Ewan McGregor.
Yeah.
McGregor all day.
Well, that's
And
that was
Well,
his
he had
boy
it
at that chance
From the moment that he started writing the script, putting it together.
because he had already just done Shallow Grave. with
then-
him.
so now dare I say,
Qualms.
DJ Qualms in the house.
I
So
can start.
qualms are
Yeah,
going to
please.
be if we have any issues, and they're not going to be to take away its merits, but more of like things that we might have issues with or baggage that we bring in, or anything that we feel like didn't match our aesthetic or capture any parts of our imagination.
Yep.
Josh starts off
I'm going to start because it's going to be quick. Mind you, I've watched these movies
10
a million
times.
times.
Yeah.
Trying to find something.
Let me guess. You have no qualm.
I have no qualms. I have watched them literally in the past couple of days, just being like, can I find anything? There's nothing about the films like there are things that make me feel uncomfortable
Mhm.
because they're so fucking real.
They're supposed to.
They're supposed to, but in terms of like, I didn't like that. It's like character things. It's like
Thanks
fucking
for
Tommy,
giving
pull
my
yourself
voice.
together. She just and the girlfriend being like, okay, maybe this is a qualm. The girlfriend dumping him because he
Lost his
accidentally.
Well, that
Porno?
wasn't why. They already had shit tons
well,
of
no,
issues.
that's always the thing is that this is just the. But
Straw.
again, that's one of those things
The
that's
straw that
like,
broke the camel's back.
okay, it's not really a qualm. It's just like, oh, come on. I'm like, talk about it or something like that. But anyway, I
'Cause,
don't
like,
really.
Yeah,
have
the
any-
first time she's introduced, he's complaining.
Yeah.
About her.
I don't have.
right, and their issues, and she's complaining about him.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I don't have qualms about the story. I don't have qualms about the creation of it. I was really did not expect the T2 to be just like so good.
Kaylin, you go next.
All right. My qualm is just
right.
more personal opinion than anything.
Mhm.
And I think it's just on my personal baggage because like the first movie had such an impact because it felt very real. It felt very like I know these people. And then when the second movie came out, it felt a little too fantastical for me. Not that I'm saying it was bad or anything.
Fantastical in what sense?
The stakes, I think,
the
and the
stakes
circumstances.
the stakes and circumstances just seem too like far-fetched for me, and it's not that I don't think that things like that have happened, but more of that like the first one felt so grounded and up close, and this one felt a little more distant just because it felt more like ooh, action movie kind of deal where the first one was like
Even though that the first one plays around with like going into a toilet and like a baby crawling on the ceiling, those are effects that are happening in their minds, but the scope of like their situations are pretty contained in themselves versus like fighting in a bar or riding on top of a car, things like that. Like those
yeah.
circumstances are a little bit more higher stakes or adrenaline actiony that you're
Right.
talking about, right?
And
Hmm.
I think they all just happened too easily. Like things went even though
Convenient.
things were like crazy, they still felt kind of according to plan.
Well, there's a
And-
criticism behind the second film about that, and I'll talk about it.
Ollie, you were gonna say something?
Oh no, it's coincidental things.
Yes.
Like there's a lot of coincidence in the second one
Right.
to set up certain interactions and things.
And
So I
I
get where you
think
come
for
from.
the first one there wasn't time for that.
Yeah.
In a way.
It felt
Like,
more organic, like an organic
yeah,
progression of
it-
things.
It felt very organic, and the other one felt very like this happens here, this happens there, this happens here.
Mhm.
It felt too like constructed for me. Again, not that I
Yeah.
think it's bad. It just the initial impact and then seeing the second one
Mhm.
didn't have the same kind of thing. So I don't really think I have any qualms aside from that because I think they're both really great movies. I like the movie.
Yeah.
I like the movie.
I
I
like the
completely agree
movie.
with what you just said.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I don't care. I don't.
There is that
That's
too.
fair.
Where
And
That's
it's
but I
like,
completely understand what you're saying. There are
Yeah.
a lot of coincidences. Begbie's sitting next to Renton in the toilet. Just so happened to be sitting right
Yeah.
there. And, you know,
There's a
it's
part of me that makes me feel not to like. I'm not trying to attack your
No,
qual. What
you're-
I'm
you're fine.
trying
Attack.
to say is that like
Discuss.
because I was listening to
It's a
what you were
discussion.
just saying, and I was like, but that's part of the style of the film.
right.
To me, like it's like the film is. It's not fantastical in my mind. I mean, there are certain things that they do where it's like where they were superimposing text while they're.
well, I think you're
explaining
talking
things and-
visually fantastic.
Visually,
She's
well,
talking about.
But, I mean, I'm getting to
Yeah.
like story wise, like
Mhm.
even story wise, where it is like weird coincidences, like oh, why are Begbie and Mark
Mhm.
all of a sudden in the same like,
Yeah.
or all these
City.
different things that just kind of happen,
Mhm.
and you're like, it's moving the story along, and it's
Yeah.
making us laugh.
Yeah.
But to me, I'm like, oh, that's part of the
But that, like, again, it didn't bother me for some
Yeah.
reason. But I
Yeah.
totally see what you're
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one thing that I kind of remembered yesterday. I'm like, Begbie got like lanced by that fucking
Oh, yeah,
like
yeah,
yeah.
what,
Skewer.
foot long skewer, and he kind of just
He was delicious.
he just kind of walks out of the the
I
hospital.
mean, he's still bleeding throughout the
bleeding,
entire
but
thing.
he
Yeah.
manages to start heisting and start and all this stuff when he's got like a
And
hole
they never
in his
go back
body.
to it.
But
And he never heal. They never show any kind of.
but you did see the magazine that he was looking at on the bedside table, right?
Well, it's about
Yeah.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
where
got
to stab.
skewered in the right place so he didn't get killed.
But even
Right.
then,
But
he
he
still, got
has
stabbed
like
wrong.
a hole all the way through his
Yeah.
body.
Yeah.
You don't tend to get in fights, and like that last scene, he would have been hurting, like tearing up that place.
yeah, because the timeline seems to be like
it was
pretty
very
quickly.
quick.
Yeah.
So he
Versus the
still would
first
have
movie's,
been.
like,
He still would have been
months and
injured
years.
somewhat when he
Right.
was tearing apart the sauna and all that. So I just was like, man. But I know his character is like a badass motherfucker.
Yeah.
So
And
maybe-
adrenaline's a hell of a drug.
yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
was
so
gonna say.
maybe-
All the blood's in his penis.
Right now.
Nowhere else.
There you go.
So maybe that was
Fair.
Yeah.
the explanation for that.
But
But that was the only thing. I
No,
was like, wait a
I
minute.
kind of thought the same way too, actually, because I was like, why is he's doing a lot of
They
stuff
could at
right
least
now?
show him like just kicking and going crazy and just a little blood coming out.
Yeah.
Because something like that. But
Money's
that's
in the
the
details.
only thing I could.
But then you flip it and you're like, if you escaped from prison and waited 20 years and the guy you were trying to get was right in front of you,
Mhm.
whether you have a hole in your side or not, would you stop?
well, yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
debating.
No, I'm just
he'd
throwing
do
that
it,
idea
but,
out there,
but
yeah.
just like a little hint that maybe he didn't like
That-
magic.
Yeah, like
was
the
Still
magazine
wanted-
wasn't
didn't care.
enough. The
Yeah,
magazine wasn't
yeah.
enough explanation
Yeah.
of like, oh, step because the way that the scene unfolded was it was like kind of like it still seemed like the guy stabbed him wrong.
stabbed him wrong.
Yeah. Oh, he did.
Like
yeah.
the way that it
He got his
like,
He did. He said,
it
"I
went
want
all the
one
way.
here,
It
and I
wasn't
want one
supposed to
here."
go all the way through.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then all of a sudden,
So he was still injured incorrectly.
Oh.
Yeah.
that book didn't do shit for him.
Mm-mm.
Huh.
You
I
just-
must have.
Because he was
Wow.
like, oh god, you did.
Although
I think he
we
said
do
he got
never
my
find
liver.
out it got his liver.
That's true.
He may
did.
think
He
it
did.
did,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
could just hurt really bad.
Yeah. So
Probably
that's
that.
like the only thing.
But I don't know,
and-
man. Those magazines tend to be pretty detailed. I'm kidding. Any other
Oh my
qualms?
No, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, so that's been like pretty much, I think, the biggest qualm I've seen online and stuff like that. It was like everything seems very coincidental. It's the
Mhm.
whole movie is based on coincidence of like, coincidentally, Renton has a heart attack at this time. Coincidentally, he wants to go back to Edinburgh. Coincidentally, Begbie gets out of prison at this time. Coincidentally, like Spud happens to be committing suicide, and then he
The
happens to be
moment
there at
he's
the right
there.
moment. And those are kind of just like move things along. I mean, like, and the cool thing that happens, I guess, there are two different narratives. Like, Trainspotting 1 starts out in the middle of everything. Like, this is a day in their life. And then it just happens that Mark Renton's like, I'm going to stop. And this is what sets off the events that happen later on.
Hmm.
And then in the second film, it's a narrative of a character coming back to a city or leaving someplace to go to somewhere, and it sets off these events. And that's kind of like the suspension of disbelief portion of writing, where like the inciting action is actually a character just coming to a city,
Mm.
and then the status quo is shifted.
Mhm.
And because that
The balance is off.
the balance is
Yeah.
off, and it's kind of like magic, where it's like when one person happens to be here, everything gets shown.
Well, it's a butterfly effect. It's a
Yeah.
if a butterfly beats its wings. you know, that whole
So I
thing.
mean, yeah, that only feels weird or jarring because
Yeah.
you're comparing one movie to the other. And I will hold
Mm.
that same qualm in that sense of like, yeah, it's just different. But I mean, to me, it doesn't take away the fact that like this is a complete story.
Mhm.
Right.
Um,
Mhm.
The first one, so I said that in the beginning. The second one I feel is better directed because I think Danny Boyle just has a little bit more experience
20,
under his
20
belt.
more years of experience, you'd say?
Yeah,
Feels like.
and he's better, better established. And I feel like everything's just a little bit more controlled. Everything's not so crazy and zany.
We had a budget for one.
Well, one thing specifically, and this is purely like my own problem. I'm not a fan of like the amount of Dutch angles used in the first one.
How dare you?
Like,
I don't even know what that is.
It's when it's not centered.
Skewed.
It's like
Oh, that makes sense.
crooked, and like I get it. And like he uses low angle and high angle differently than American filmmakers use it, which I'm okay with because to me that's how European filmmakers are. And he's using it in an effect that makes you feel more claustrophobic than anything. It's not supposed to be about a paradigm shift of power. It's supposed to be about like this character is lower than ground. But then like the low angle, just the low angle beginning, but all the Dutch angle shots, I'm like, oh god, it's a lot.
They don't call him Danny Dutch for no reason.
I know, and I'm just like,
that's really one of his
Danny
nicknames.
Dutch boy.
it's like Michael, lens flare, or JJ lens flare, like the same thing. Like you just do it, and I get
It's a
it, and
director
it's cool.
trademark.
But I'm like, I'm not at the bit. You don't need to use it that much. Christopher
Well,
Nolan
maybe
and the
he would
revolving
say,
shot.
"Fuck you, I do."
Yeah.
And like,
Do
Fincher-
you have
Mr. Boyle, right
director
now.
like? Does he have like? These are things that Tom does.
I mean, I feel like I'm very Tarantino, where I
His-
steal from everyone else.
His is more involved in the story, though, I think. Your
I mean,
trademarks.
like Nolan has a lot of people on the backside. Like Tarantino has to have the N word somewhere.
Mhm.
Like those are just things
Wes
like
Anderson.
Yeah.
Nerd?
those are their own specific
nerd,
things
yeah.
that they have to
Okay.
put in there. And I'm just not. I just don't love the Dutch angle as often as he uses it.
No.
It's the other word.
I almost just said, my garage doesn't say dead nerd storage.
Okay.
Because she said
wow.
my
nerd.
gosh.
But I didn't. But now I said it.
Great.
But yeah, I mean, those would be my main thing. There, I don't really have actually any problems with the second one in terms
Yeah.
of like its angles and visual styles. But I did love like the colors in the first one are just to me better. Colors in the first one are way better.
Well, is it better, or do you think it's a stylistic choice?
It's better.
Oh.
It's better.
Because to me, it's a stylistic choice. Everything's very
I think
much
it's stylistic.
muted now at this point in their lives.
I mean, the second one looks more close to 28 Days Later. And I would say in that sense where it's like there is more like, even though it's newer technology and stuff like that, there's more grain or noise because it might be digital. But like in the first one, they didn't have that as much. And that's why I liked it more.
Okay.
And so I'm saying for me, it's better for me. So when I say better, to me, it's better.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to ask the question if you thought it was maybe stylized or
No,
not.
it's better to me.
Okay, it's not open for discussion. Cool.
Yeah. Interesting.
It's
Oh.
hard to, I mean, the one thing I'll say is when the filmmaking, and maybe it's just like doing what I do or whatever, or consuming, like doing the podcast, whatnot, like when filmmaking styles take me out of a movie, that's where I'm like, okay, you maybe use it too much.
Style over substance.
So I think the first one to me had a little bit, like I would say, tone it down by like 5%.
Of what specifics?
Just the different camera shots and like, just the symbolism and the surrealism.
I ate that shit up, baby.
I know. Like I love, like you were saying, Big Fish. I love Big Fish,
Yeah, you do.
but it didn't always have the occasion for it. I feel. The second one, I don't know if I have any. I guess just more of the kind of like it felt like like too much of a modern movie at least at the beginning, and I wish it had. Ironically, I wish it preserved some more of that style. Like
for better or for worse,
He
has
hates it, but he wants more of it.
yeah, I wanted like both of them to meet somewhere in the middle. I guess is what I'm saying.
for your palate.
Yeah. For me, for what I enjoy. But aside from that, there's not really a whole lot that I disliked. The first one, I mean, so rarely do we go into movies completely blind nowadays. So I feel like, but in this case, I think it served a bit of a disservice because I was like, oh, is this going to be just another like junky movie, whatever that I've seen already a billion times? But quickly, it was not that.
Oh, it's not that.
But at the beginning, I was like, I hope I enjoy these. Like I want to enjoy them. I love all the actors in it. Like I've seen everything they've done since this movie. For a lot of those actors.
This is the Godfather for those actors.
Yeah, big time.
I didn't know it was Ewan McGregor for really, like, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
all the movies.
He like lost 2 stones just for the
20 something pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was
The
it-
girl.
Corey, was it
um,
after 1 or 2?
It was at the end of 1 when his name came up
Oh,
that
Yeah.
you went, that's Hugh McGregor? And I was like, yeah,
Yeah,
the whole time.
I didn't know the whole time. I was like, he looks so familiar.
the girl, the little 14-year-old girl.
Boardwalk Empire.
I know her first from Boardwalk Empire. I'm
Oh.
like, oh
and
shit.
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter.
I actually know her
I'm
from,
sorry.
from a movie
Harry
called
Potter?
Choke.
What? Who? What? Who was she?
The Diane character that you like.
Yeah. Who was she in Harry Potter?
She was Rowena Ravenclaw's ghost.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, I would not have
Creator of
recognized that.
Ravenclaw.
No.
Yeah.
Right, Rowena?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, the ghost
Wow.
that he has to go find the diadem.
And Tommy is was
Wow.
like in an NBC because I was trying to place him
Well, he
for
was
the
on
longest
Grey's
time.
Anatomy for a while.
He was on Grey's
and-
Anatomy. I didn't spawn because I didn't watch Grey's Anatomy, but I watched Journeyman.
Yeah.
Actually, in a weird, I've got to bring comic books in it. He was actually one of the front runners to be Thor.
Oh,
Really?
I could see that.
Tommy.
Huh.
Yeah.
But yeah, the
I didn't
second
see
one.
Because he's
Yeah.
big now.
I
big
think
guy.
most of them stem from what you said for the
Muscular.
second one, which is like, I love like obviously it's set up to like all these coincidental things happen to kind of illustrate that you can't run away from like your past and like stuff catches up to you, et cetera, et cetera. But I feel like it was a hair too convenient in some cases. One thing
Mm.
that the one time that really stuck out to me was when Franco went to the club, and I was like, why would he go to the club?
Mm.
Because he
That's
had
true.
he had his Viagra, but then he went to the club to take him or something. Or
Because
he,
his wife wasn't doing the job.
but
Yeah.
why the club? Like I feel like he would go to a pub maybe or
Respect to all
something.
women. But
Yeah, that is.
So
but-
that was one thing I was
he's,
like,
he's, if I may interject,
Yeah,
why
yeah,
he
yeah.
went to the club, because that's where they all used to go 20 years ago, the last time he was
this is
free.
supposed to be the
Was that the same
volcano
club?
right?
No, it might be the same club, but that's all he knows
oh, okay.
is to go to clubs.
So I guess that was the only
Pick
thing.
up girls at the club.
It was
It's-
funny though,
yeah.
because it was funny to see him like when they all like were lowering, like doing that one dance all together, and he was like confused for a
Like,
second,
what
and then
the
they,
fuck?
yeah,
Yeah,
and
because
they-
I think it's supposed to mirror the first scene where they all go get girls,
yeah,
and he gets one, everyone gets one except Mark.
yeah.
And then he meets the younger girl. So
But
I
he's
mean,
still
to
suave to this day.
character wise, it makes sense. To
It
me,
makes
'cause
sense,
that's-
but that's when I noticed. I was like, okay, well,
he's on
it's-
Arrested Development in a
I
sense.
feel like that was maybe a little convenient for
Good
them
show.
to be there at the same exact time,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
I'm going to
Or
argue
disappear
the
that way.
convenience thing.
No, yeah, please.
Coincidental.
Yeah, no,
because I
'cause-
would say 99% of all movies are coincidental.
That's part of it too, where it's like if this was in a bubble without the first one, I would say that I wouldn't even
Well,
notice.
that's what Tom was saying. It's
Technically-
like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I
that's-
mean, technically speaking, like if you want to like dive into it and be like, how could you fix it? It's kind of like you make it where that like sick boy visited Begbie in prison and
Yeah.
then accidentally splurted that he saw Renton.
Yeah.
And then it causes Begbie to get out. Or something causes Spud
Yeah,
to like
because I was gonna say, like off the top of my head,
The events
like
wouldn't
Iron
be
Man,
different.
for example. How coincidental is the first 30 minutes of Iron Man that he happens to be in a Humvee that gets blown up and captured by people that happen to have his equipment and happen to want him to build something, and he happens to trick them into giving him the right parts
Yeah.
for a whatever it's called. What's the thing? Arc
arc reactor.
reactor.
I-
And it's
I
just
guess-
like that's super coincidental.
But I also don't say Iron Man's the best written movie of all time.
I said off the top of my head.
okay.
Yeah. I think
I hate it when mom and dad fight.
Said off the top of my head. That's all I got right now.
I think
Give me 10
my-
minutes. I'll come with 30 films.
my whole thing was that not that it was. I don't think it necessarily took away from the movie, but it was something that I noticed.
Yeah.
and,
And I think it's
I don't
like
like
you
when I
said,
notice
because
it.
the first one isn't so much. That.
Yeah,
The
it's
first one's very organic, and the second one's maybe not a lot.
and it's
Maybe
not even
that's-
like it's not even like when I finished the first one, I was like, oh, that was a really organic series of events.
exactly.
It was-
yeah.
After seeing like a couple specific things inside of the second one, where I was
Right.
like, this is all happening like within.
Yeah.
The
A
second
bubble.
one makes you feel like Renton's pulling everyone together from some like weird attract force, and maybe we're supposed to pick that up.
Mhm.
Maybe we're supposed to pick it up that like since Renton comes back, that we're all supposed to come back together.
He was the
And-
thing holding them together in the first film.
Yeah, and the thing is, these are all supposed to be his mates, right?
Mhm.
And the only reason they all split up is because of him. So it makes sense that they all come together. But then the first one, everything happens because of somebody else.
Mm.
Right.
Someone else's job. Someone else's does a fight. Someone's baby dies. Someone dies. Someone does this, and those things
Yeah.
bring each other together.
And maybe like coincidence. I guess I don't know whether coincidence is the right word or convenience is the right word, but it's not like those are I don't even know how to explain it, but like it's not because those things are happening because of each other. It's the way that they're stitched together. I
Mm.
feel like I could have used like a seed to kind of pull it together, like you said, like slipping that he's alive or he's in town or whatever. Something to kind of just like, okay, now there's an actual like semi-believable
impetus for
reason.
all
Well,
the-
that's how the
all the-
book was actually. The what's it called? Porno.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But
It
again,
happened
it was
differently in the
so
book,
it was so
yeah.
minute,
Mm,
and it's
mhm.
like barely a qualm.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up a
Yeah,
other side of the coin type of thing. I don't have qualms.
Yeah.
I
At all.
told you picking Corey was dumb.
Whoa.
Um,
Did I pick
I
Corey?
forgot. No, I'm kidding.
No.
yeah, I don't. Coming from my background with my family and just having seen it at a young age and kind of grown with it, for me, I think having seen it at a young age and then having so much time go by, and then seeing the film, I myself have grown with it at such like a pivotal time in my life,
Mhm.
going from being like 14 to 28 watching it. Like that's double my life at that
Yeah.
point. So for me, I thought the seaming the two together was wonderful. I don't
Yeah.
have any. To me, the whole second film made sense for character wise for everyone.
Mhm.
Cool. So that brings us to my actual favorite part, where we must rate the film.
Mm-hmm.
For Wakanda. So I have the most votes, so I can go first.
I think is it all
Um,
just Tom and Ali?
It's
Yeah.
just
It
us
was
two.
just us two, yeah.
So whoever you fives would
I
like
had
to go
more, I
first,
had
go
more
ahead.
Grump votes.
You five.
Well, should they go first?
Yeah,
So
they
it
have
builds
to
up
go
to
first.
us.
Yeah, they have to.
Trainspotting 1 is a 5 and 2 is a 4.8.
Nice.
Josh.
I would do vice versa. Number
Sure.
1 is a
Well,
4.8,
I knew it.
and number 2 is a 5.
I was like, 5 is gonna be his Trainspotting too. I learned something new about you.
Trainspotting 1 is a 5, just because of the sheer impact.
Oh God.
Yeah, just no, for real. And then the second one, 4.3. Just because it frustrated me so much, the change. Like, and I understand that it's personal baggage, but
Which is like a trope of sequels, where sometimes
Right.
you expect one thing, you get another thing, and then sometimes if it's not the same thing, or if it's a little bit too different than you expected, it lowers what you think.
yeah.
It is.
Well, and again, it's literally just the sheer impact that, and honestly, like, there's somewhere far in the back of my brain that's like, give it a 3 point something. I'm angry, but
That's your weakness talking to you.
That's
Yeah.
the weakness talking to me. So I'm gonna go with 4.3.
Behind.
A 6 and a 6.
There we go.
Wow.
Shattering the nerd scale.
New rating
I
system.
don't need your freaking scale. I can do what I want.
It's
She
true.
does
And-
live outside of the episode.
Yeah.
So
She does.
she has
Yeah.
an
Omnipotent.
omnipotent force.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
I mean, technically, she starts the episode and ends
Yes.
the episode.
Yeah.
She is the alpha and omega.
Right? Right?
So
There you go.
she's
I'm the donut.
she's the only one.
I was gonna say God, but okay.
I'm the bookend.
And then it's Ali. You had 2 and Tom had 3. So you're
Yeah.
next.
For me, it is a 4.8 for 1
Mhm.
and a 4.5 for 2.
Cool.
Mm.
I win.
Yeah.
Sorry. 5 for Trainspotting 1, and then it's 4.5 for Trainspotting 2.
Cool. So all relatively high.
So she
Sorry,
has
was
the
I the
lowest
problem?
one number.
No.
Yeah.
She has the lowest. What was it? 4.3.
4.3 and 5.
So add those
Jeez.
beesies
Quick
up.
math.
And then
5 plus 4.
5
We'll do our own scores.
Divided by 2. Her is collecting 4.65. Mine's 5 plus 4.5.
just an average.
Oh God. 5 plus
I knew I should have picked
4.5
Caitlin.
divided by 2. Mine's 4.75, and yours is 4.8, 4.5?
6. Yeah.
4.6.
Does
No.
am
I think
I?
you're gonna be the
poopy
Am
pants.
I
You
the
are.
grump?
You're collectively
I knew it.
4.6.
Wow.
I'm the grump, you
I knew I should have
guys.
picked you.
Thank
I
you
knew it.
all. This
Poopy
moment
pants.
It's the
means
first
so
moment
much.
for you.
This is the first time that I'm a grump because
Congratulations.
heroin.
How does it feel to shit on the things we love?
She didn't shit on the
I'm just
video.
kidding.
shit on it. The movie shit on itself a couple of
Like,
times.
It did.
many times.
Literally.
It did.
Yes.
Twice.
That's the
And
pretty
all over
high
the
grump.
walls.
Those are pretty high.
I want to
rated
say though
grump.
that the grump was what? 4.6.
6.
That's
that's a
the
high
grump.
grump.
4.6
Yeah.
Quote
was the
unquote.
grump.
But that
I've
goes
been-
to show.
I've been a grump with the 4.8.
Yeah.
That's
Come on.
true. That's true.
That's true.
That goes to show how good these movies are.
Mhm.
Well, the thing is also, we can have qualms with it, but it doesn't take away the fact that we still love them.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Like,
no.
there can be, like, it's to me, I think of like pizza. You can have pepperoni, mushrooms, and onions, and someone's not going to like one of the toppings.
And now I just want pizza.
But it doesn't mean pizza's not bad. Do I dare say we gush about some things?
I feel like we've gushed.
We've gushed for an hour and
We've
something.
gushed for about 2
Ewan
hours.
McGregor wanted to try using
2
heroin,
hours.
but then
They said no.
they said no.
Yeah.
The football team at the beginning is actually a
Soccer team.
a soccer team that actually are people who are supporting like recovering addicts, and they became the drug councils in the shoot.
The guy who played Sick Boy, I don't remember his name off the top of my head, wanted to shave his head bald, like horseshoe style,
Nice.
for the second film, and Danny Boyle was like, no, he's gonna be blonde. but he's gonna be bleaching.
Oh my god.
Bleaching his roots.
I would see Sick Boy as Vane.
Yeah.
And so like he would
he's
definitely
really
keep
big,
up
yeah.
his.
No, Danny Boyle made the right choice. I'm just
Yeah,
saying the
no,
actor
yeah.
wanted to be like,
And
I'm older.
Spud's girlfriend is who in Harry Potter?
Moaning
Moaning
Myrtle.
Myrtle.
Moaning
Oh
Myrtle.
my
Yeah.
god.
She's actually been in a lot of amazing films that
She's-
just to go look
Yes,
She
that's where
is-
she's from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
I see it.
She's
I
Moaning
wonder
Myrtle.
for
why
weddings
she
and a
looks
funeral, right?
familiar.
She was in
Um,
a bunch of weird little movies, but she's awesome.
She's great.
Wow.
We already mentioned that the volcano room thingy in the Clockwork Orange.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
actually based off Clockwork Orange. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, what a mind fuck for me. To me, that was the biggest. I'm like, oh, that's I wasn't wrong.
I said that to you when you said you were like, it reminds me of Clockwork Orange. I was like, yeah, the whole
Bridget
bar
Jones'
scene
Diary.
is.
But I didn't get that.
Bridget Jones.
Oh,
I
until you
didn't get
saw
what
it?
you meant until I actually saw the words on the wall. I was like, oh, that's the milk bar.
Yeah.
God,
But there, like I said, there are several references
Yeah.
to it.
There are
Danny-
references to the Beatles,
Lots.
visual references.
Yeah, the walking
lots
across.
of them.
Well, also Mother Superior and
I think
Yeah.
the
There's one
entire crew watched The Exorcist before this movie, preparing for it,
interesting.
Oh.
because that was like the biggest movie of the time.
Huh.
And so they prepared as like, we got to make a movie just as good.
Mhm.
I
Oh.
was like, wow.
Wow.
Exorcist was a
Wow.
huge play or a huge like point of inspiration for them and the crew.
Wow.
I can see that.
I feel complete.
I feel
I'm
complete.
feeling pretty
Yeah.
complete about
Yeah.
I
this.
feel
I'm about to
great.
complete.
I'm the grump.
I feel great.
I feel great.
Thank
you,
you,
Bonnie.
everybody. Well, yeah, actually, thank you, wifey,
Oh, you're
for
quite welcome.
Thank
delicious
you,
coming to
Bonnie.
the studio.
Yay.
Coming across the,
The river.
lawn.
Yes, across
From
the
the
lawn to the
house.
studio.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for
My
being on
pleasure. This was fun.
for being the
It's
voice of
awesome
Nerd
to-
On.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I get paid a lot for that.
All those residuals, right?
Yeah.
In love.
In love, in
Yeah.
deliciousness.
Delicious Josh.
Oh,
Nerd on
And-
after dark.
And Weasel.
And Weasel.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The Weasel.
And we also need to thank our patrons. I
Over
think,
at
one
Patreon.
more time.
Mhm.
One more time.
Thank you
over
to
at
our
Patreon.
listeners.
Welcome to
Yeah.
year 2. Yo.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's gonna be great.
So good. So good.
Thank you for you. As
Just
Corey
listening.
says, yes, you.
Yeah, you.
Choose
You
life.
listening.
You.
Not the other people. Specific you with the headphones in.
Or if you're
Get
not wearing
roasted.
headphones, driving.
Or with the computer.
No, I'm talking to one
Speakers.
person specifically.
Oh, that one
with
person
the headphones
with the
in,
headphones.
with the
Oh, I know
backwards
that.
hat that says your fraternity. You don't need to wear that anymore. You're 46.
Wow. I got
It's
really
not 4
specific.
years. It's for life. All right.
Personal.
Attorney man over here.
If they love everything they hear,
Shout out for Sega.
where can they go, Josh?
They can head on over to nerdon.tv. Has all the linky links and the infos, all that good stuff. Wifey, do you have anything that you would like
Where can
our
listeners
fans
find
to
some cool
check
stuff
out?
from you?
I can be seen auditioning in front of a microphone.
Can be heard on StarCraft 2,
Yes.
which I was playing last night.
Oh, cool.
Not last night. Last week.
No, I
Last
got
night I was
nothing.
rating.
Choose life.
Okay.
Yeah. She doesn't do the socially socials.
She didn't,
She's just really
Because
cool.
she doesn't
She's-
choose Instagram or Facebook.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
on the
She chooses-
Facebook. I'm on the FB. But
If
I,
it was,
I just never.
I think if it
say
wasn't my
anything.
job, I wouldn't be doing them either.
I'm on it.
All I
That's
see
fair.
is you guys
That's
tagging
fair.
each other what
At this
movie
point,
theaters
I'm
you're
like
at.
so
Yeah.
saturated.
Yeah. But as always,
Nerd on.
Ending broadcast.